What's going on, everyone? We just wanted to take a second to thank you for all your support so far. It means the world to us. Also wanted to give a special shout out to our partner and friends at Mahon River Farm. They are your local source of pasture-raised poultry. Make sure to give my buddies Alex and Tom a call and arrange a time to check out their farm and pick up some meat for the freezer. No steroids, no hormones, just all natural chickens. Give them a follow on Facebook and tell them we sent you. Next shout out goes to the Hometown Advantage podcast. They're a big supporter of this show. They're your local sports podcast here in Cecil and Hartford County, shining light on all the youth athletics and high school athletics in this area. So make sure you give them a follow on Spotify, like them, rate them, download them. Also hit them on YouTube and give them a like and a subscribe over there and help those guys grow. Thanks for tuning in to the Upper Bay Podcast. Alright, we're rolling. It's the Upper Bay Podcast. You can find us on Spotify and YouTube. If you're listening to us on there, do all the things, like, rate, download, subscribe. And as always, thank you for tuning in to another episode. Today we have a Mr. Holt Benner with us, and this is Mason and Dan's buddy, who apparently is a big buck slayer. How you doing, man?
I'm good.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I've when we first started this, I told Dan, because Dan always mentioned that he was down there hanging out with you and stuff, and he told me about your big deer, and I was like, man, we got to get him on. We got to talk about it. But I think we'll do another one all about that deer, and I think that'll be a fun episode to get into that. But
yeah, I can bring him along, and you can see him in person and everything.
Yeah, that'd be
I've
awesome.
never seen him in person, but I've seen pictures.
Are you just mainly a public land guy, or are you a private land guy?
I do it all.
You do it all?
Mostly because I'm getting forced out of private lands like everybody else.
Right.
I've been adapting to the public, but just been scouting it and hiking in it for 10 plus years.
Right.
And then I probably was 7 years into like shed hunting and scouting them before I actually hunted the first time.
Wow.
And probably the last 3 or 4 years I've been 90% of my hunts are on public. So,
yeah, that's pretty cool. I know, like, these guys are into it, but I mean, I'm in the same boat. Like, I do private stuff, but every 2 years we get pushed out of a lease, you know, and then we just farm hop basically, you know. And I did the public land thing a couple times, and I ride around it. Like, I live right in Fair Hill, and I ride around and I see all the deer and stuff. But Mason actually asked me the other day, he's like, why don't you ever hunt these deer you see? Man, I don't have time.
Yeah, normally what happens is Shane sees them, tells me about them, and then I go try to kill them.
I just give everybody the info. I give everybody the lowdown.
He's like, hey,
I'm the same thing. I've been mountain biking at Fair Hill for 28-ish years.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I know every inch of Fair Hill.
Right.
I don't like hunting it.
I got Holt to go one time last year, and
I
he
think
said
I went
never
maybe
again.
2 or 3 times with you last year, and I think I said 17 hikers and bikers go by me in one day.
Every
I was like,
experience Holt had was not good.
It was fine. I saw deer, but I'm not out there to watch people and listen to their conversations.
You're not
It's
there
like,
to get away.
yeah, I don't want to hear a person, but public land, it's what it comes with. So
Right.
but there's better ones around that you can hide.
I was about to say, especially that specific one. Like, when I was, the one year I did a lot of public land hunting, it was on Fair Hill, and I was like, I found this good spot. You know, I went back there the first time. It was like kind of rainy, and I didn't see anybody, and I'm like, man, I'm far enough from everybody. I saw some deer. I went back the next time, and there was like, I just hear talking. I look around, there's just horseback riders everywhere. I'm like, God, I didn't realize it was that close to a trail.
That happens to me all the time, dude. I'll get into a spot, and I'll be like following something, like, man, this looks really good.
Right.
I'm going to sit up here. And then like 15 minutes later, I'll be sitting in my tree and be like, what's that? And there'll be like a horse coming down. I'm like, where the hell? And you're like 25 yards off a trail.
My confidence.
Yeah, and you're right. Well, I'm not, but they don't care. I mean, that 9-pointer I shot, a mountain biker run behind me like 10 minutes before he walked out. I was like, damn it. Yeah. And then he walked out like 10 minutes later.
Yeah. It's just like mentally getting yourself over that hurdle of there's all that going around you, and like,
how's a mature buck gonna walk out?
Right.
So,
Right.
like, here's an example. Like, most of the public, the deer are used to it. Like, I hunted a pretty secluded spot, and probably an hour before dark, I hear a beagle howling.
Right.
And he comes up, and I can see him 150 yards away. Then the hunter's walking behind him. Like, it wasn't 15 minutes later after they went through, a deer come down, and I shot it. Like, it just doesn't matter really because the deer are used to it.
Yeah, I mean, I've always heard that they just lay low and watch, and like they understand, like once they've moved on out of eyesight, like they're kind of safe, you know, just because they're around it.
A little tougher in the late season because once they visually see you, then it's game over for a lot of things. And then they see hikers, they tend to just run off to the next thicket. So and you got to be set up in that one thicket, hoping they all pile in there that night.
That's pretty much what.
Yeah, where I was hunting, it was like a creek bottom, and I hunted it several times. Only because the second time I hunted it was during the rut, and I saw a nice one in there, and I just kept going back, and then like the last time I went in there on my way in, I saw somebody like marked it off with tape, like almost walked the exact same trail I was walking.
They spray paint the trees sometimes.
That's what Holt.
I told him last year I went in on like opening day, and some guy had blazed the trail through public and was spray painting the trees.
Yeah.
Wow.
I went to a completely different property.
Yeah.
And walking in the dark, I found the exact same sign. And he was within, both spots were within 50 yards of like one of my go-to spots.
Oh, wow.
Like, so he was keyed in on my spot, but not like dead on it. But the same guy on two different completely properties found the exact same spot. So
what are the chances?
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy that like somebody else picked up on the same exact sign that you were looking at, you know, like,
he was just off, and so he wasn't killing anything. Like,
I got you.
Like,
So it's that
he was
specific.
in the ball game, but like he wasn't there. Like he wasn't in the tree he needed to be in.
Right.
50 yards in a thick swamp, you're not going to shoot anything.
Right.
Like you got to be, you know, it's that 50 yards is what makes it or break it. So.
And it's funny that you say that. Like he wasn't in the game. Like it's just a matter of like. Essentially, it's a matter of inches, you know. You're saying 50 yards. I mean, that's nothing, you know. But if you're 50 yards off in the wrong direction, it changes everything. That is crazy, especially on. I mean, I would imagine I've seen it a bunch on public or on private land too. Like we had a piece that backed up to like city limits, and we knew where the line was, and nobody was ever down in there in the city limits area, but we didn't want to get caught down in there, so we stayed on our side. But literally, like all the deer walked that bottom just over the line, you know, and it was like they were only 80 yards from you, but you were just 80 yards too far.
I was actually thinking about this just today. Property lines don't keep deer out, but they keep humans out.
Right.
So what do you do when you go look at a property? You walk the property line.
Right.
You load it up with scent. Deer come, hit that wall, they know where to walk.
Wow. Yeah.
So
Sure.
if you want to skirt this issue, you find a section of property line. Which, like I do hunt a lot of property lines because that's where the deer are. You find a section of property line that it's impossible for somebody to walk, and you'll find deer.
Well, like a swamp?
Yep. Cattails, water,
briar thicket, something
thicket,
stupid thick.
something that the average person there's no way they'll go 150 yards around it to get away from it. And then most likely there's gonna be deer in it.
Right.
Makes sense.
So setting up like literally in it, can produce. And the other thing with that is transitions. You always hear people talking about transitions, like hunt the edge of this, hunt the edge of that. How often do you hunt the edge and the deer's on the other side of the transition?
Right.
Hunt the thicker side of the transition, not hunt the easy open wood side.
Right.
So hunt like almost.
Your shot's gonna be very, very limited, but find that one little trail that has some fresh tracks in it, get up in that thick stuff, and hold tight. So
yeah, and a lot of people avoid that because nobody wants to walk through the thick shit.
You get up in a tree, like I have a
shoot?
5-yard shot, I have an 8-yard shot, and that's it. I can't shoot behind me, I can't shoot anywhere else.
Right.
I can't shoot 20 yards in front of me, but you only need that sometimes. So
That's where you need to be.
That's exactly what we were looking at the other day.
And most of that thick stuff too is like they only got one or two ways to get in and out of there.
Right, it's so thick that a big buck can't even he's going to take
they're
this
go
way.
north out of it or south out of it, and you just pick a side.
Hope you're on the right end.
And a lot of times with those thick spots, winds don't matter because they'll come out when the thermal changes. It's already dropping and pulling into those low spots, so they're going to come out anywhere they feel safe.
Right. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I was just going to say, like, speaking of, like, wind and thermals and scent and all that, like, what are you doing to better your odds and with all that?
It's tricky. Every spot is situational.
Right.
A kind of general rule is I use the wind to enter my area, and I don't care what the deer is betting on with the wind. Like I know it sounds weird, but and I'm planning on the thermals to kill them.
Okay.
So I'm using the wind for me, using the thermals for him.
Right. Okay.
And I'm not afraid to come in upwind of a buck bed if I think I can find certain terrain features will alter winds, and you can use that to your advantage just like the buck is using it.
Right, okay.
It's very situational, and it's a very weird way of thinking.
Right.
Because you're always taught to, like, sneak in from the downwind, circle way around the bed, and sometimes you can't do that, or it's unfeasible.
Right.
And you think the buck's bulletproof when actually you could. I mean, how many times you walk up on big bucks all the time and surprise them?
Yeah, I mean, it's happened to me a couple times.
They think they got the wind, and you still walk up on them. You're like, I just walked in on that buck up. Why did you do that?
So that day that I walked up on that big one, how that bottom sets up, I think he was using the creek as like a buffer. He had some super thick briars to his back, so nothing was coming behind him.
Right.
But it was weird because it was a southwest wind that day, so that wind was blowing. He had that wall at his back, and you would think that he'd be bedding there for like a northwest wind, so it was blowing from his back. But he was bedded with a southwest wind, looking out of this briar thicket
in the
cove.
open.
Yeah, and he was looking out, and the wind was hitting him in the face.
Yeah.
And all the thick stuff was to his back, which was, I don't know, it was a little weird.
But every buck is different, like how it beds.
Right.
And that was during the rut too.
I really love bed hunting now. Like it's one of my favorite things to do. I don't care if I blow that deer out. I'm just going to go to the next one.
Right. Yeah.
And not every bed has a buck in it. Like,
right.
And I learned these beds from years of hunting them.
Just walking.
And finding mostly in the winter, because the winter shows the fall patterns.
Right.
Summer doesn't show.
No.
Like in the summer, you're seeing summer patterns, and late spring.
Yeah.
You can't hunt deer because they're in different patterns from then to then.
And it's usually just right on field edges.
Yeah.
Is really where I feel like all the big bucks
So
are.
I try to relate as much as I can, and that's why I love shed hunting, but it becomes a scouting mission sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
Because I'll get into sign, I'll slow down, I'll start looking at it, and usually you can pick out a bedding area. It's usually they're pretty normal, like you're saying, like a blowdown with thicket, and then a little bit of visibility in front of them.
I feel like once you see it it kind of is like, oh, like you kind of like realize it, like this is what he's doing. You see it, and they kind of all, not always, but they seem to use that same pattern to bed, like something thick at their back. They like some structure. I feel like at their back, and usually with the wind.
A lot of times you'll have like if it's a mature buck bedding, and they don't stay there. It's usually a week long, and they're gone.
Yeah, no.
There's usually some kind of sign within 50 yards of his bed, like a big scrape and a rub. Because what first thing he does when he gets up, he'll go and just hit that.
Yeah.
To wake himself up almost, it seems like. But and usually, and then sometimes when you find that one scrape or one big rub, and then you go 100 yards around, there's nothing.
Yeah.
It's because he doesn't rub, because he's only doing it when he gets out of his bed to mark his bed. That's what I believe.
You think it's a territorial thing?
Kind of.
Like kind of telling like another buck, like, hey, this is my spot, kind of stay away.
Yeah, and the rut, everything's out the window.
Right,
anything can happen. But like early October, if you find that one, stop and look. Within 50 yards, there's probably a buck bed there. Like a significant rub, like, chest high, big.
Yeah.
Like those little dinky spike ones you see in the woods under every
like saplings.
Every beech tree has, 10 of them.
Yeah.
These little guys.
Yeah.
Like, that's just them being ornery. So
Big bucks leave big sign.
Yeah.
So do you like to hunt scrapes?
Not necessarily, but they usually, like I was saying, I like to hunt the bed, and there's usually a scrape nearby, so I'll try to be positioned between those two almost. Like I said, it's within 50 yards. I would try to get within 30 yards of his bed while he's in it.
That's close.
Yeah. Like it. I mean, if it takes you, I've had times where it's taken me 2 hours to go 50 yards.
Yeah.
Like literally tiptoeing as slow as I can, and I climb the tree, and I can hear them sneezing in their bed, like and breathing and stuff.
Wow.
Like, it's happened. I've had some really good encounters like that, probably 6 to 10 times.
Huh. I can never get that lucky.
Well,
every time that works out perfectly for me, I'll get to the top and I'll hear them behind me. I'm like, oh yeah, and I look and just a little button buck.
It was like the one I almost shot a couple years ago.
That's not a bad thing. I do have satellite deer all the time get up around me, and sometimes you blow them out doing it.
Okay.
But a lot of times I'm not just randomly walking into these spots or I knew the bed was there. A lot of times is I get a visual of the buck on a previous hunt. And within 2 hours of dark or so, I know he's close to his bed.
Right.
So while I'm in that stand, I'll use it as an observation, and I'll watch him what he does and how he feeds before he goes off and feeds for the night. And I'll mark a tree that night with my eyes, like I need to get to that tree right there.
Yeah.
And then that's a perfect scenario. And then the next day, I'm calling out of work, whatever it takes. Or taking off work early and then heading out there and doing that exact thing and going to that tree, crawling to it. Then I'll just climb that tree as slow as I can and I'll point myself directly at that buck bed.
Wow.
And the closest I've climbed to a buck was probably about 15 yards.
It's insane.
That's right. Yeah, that's
pretty
insane.
One time I did it. Yeah, one time I did it, and I didn't know he was there. I was actually looking for another buck, and he stood up about an hour after I got up, and he was literally like 15 yards away from me, behind a log.
Wow.
A mature buck?
Nah, I'd say he's like a good 2.5-year-old, but he had a nice, decent rack on him. Wow. But there was a bigger one in the area, and I wasn't going to shoot him anyway.
So will you hunt the beds in the mornings?
Or
is that, you think,
you think they're usually
I'm
back
not a
in
morning
the bed?
guy.
No.
Really?
You're a morning guy?
No, I'm not a morning guy.
I'm not a morning hunter.
The only way I would do that is if it was early season and you knew there was a group coming back to a certain very section.
Like a bachelor group,
If I 100%
somewhat.
knew they were feeding in this field and they were coming back to this bedding area, I would put myself in that bedding area in the central of it and hope that, because they're going to mill around in there in the morning for a couple hours before they bed down. They're not going to get in there and drop down before the sun comes up.
Yeah.
That usually happens later in the season when they're pressured. They'll get down before
Before it's even light. Before it's even legal.
I just hate blowing them out of like all my spots. At least you got to go through the fields to get to anything,
Yeah.
and they're feeding in the fields, and it's like I've heard multiple people say like when it's pitch black dark, like they really don't understand. You know, they don't know what you are, but you've blown them out, and now
So I got a great example of that scenario, and if you want to hear, it's a little bit of a long story, but
I got all night.
so when I shot my big one, he was living beside a field. There was a creek in the woods about 40 or 50 yards, and he was traveling the edge of the creek in the dark and going back and bedding on a neighbor's property. It was logged. It was a logged property, so it's perfect for a buck. And the hunters back there don't seem to hunt until after the rut and beyond.
Gun season.
Yeah, so the buck was safe back there, and I couldn't get to him. So it took, what I would normally do is, like you were saying, walk the edge of the wood line all the way around the wood, and then I would just jump into the woods right where I was hunting them.
Right.
Well, I did that time after time after time. So the morning I killed him, I actually walked out in the center of the field, walked across the entire field, right down the middle of it, and walked right to my stand. With it, I was more. It's hard to explain, but more out of the wind a little bit.
Right.
And it rained all night, so my thought was he was going to come back from the cornfield across the street late because he didn't know the sun was coming up because of the overcast.
Okay.
So, and sure enough, about 6:30, I heard a huge crack. It sounded like a baseball bat hitting a tree, and it jumped. I jumped. It was so loud. So I stood up, and then here he come walking down that creek, and he walked about 10 feet and stopped, and he was sniffing. Walked about 10 feet and stopped, and the wind was blowing kind of catty corner to him. If I would have walked around that field that morning, he would have smelled me 100 yards away, and I would have never even known he was there.
Wow.
So me walking across the field right to my tree gave me enough chance for him to walk to me before he caught my scent. It's just, and I didn't do that necessarily on purpose. I think I was just being lazy that morning, to be honest. But I was like, nothing else is working. I'm just going to walk straight across this field right to my stand. Why spend all that time sneaking around?
And you were on him.
It killed him. Because of that move, killed him.
Wow. That's insane.
You hunted him like sun up to sundown for multiple days, didn't you?
I had 65 hours on the stand prior to shooting him. Just that week. And I had about...
Just that week.
Yeah.
I remember when you swung by the house after you shot him.
Yeah, I was doing sun up to sundown for like 5 or 6 days in a row, and then I took one day off, and then I think I shot him the next day.
Wow.
And he was on my camera on that Sunday and I took off that Sunday morning to go out to breakfast with the family because I was gone.
Right.
The wife let me hunt that deer because she knew what it meant to me.
Right.
And so I decided to go to breakfast with the family, and then I got in Sunday afternoon. I checked the card on the way in, and he was on there at like 9:30 in the morning that Sunday morning. I was like, I thought that was it.
A heartbreaker.
Yeah, but he was very elusive. I only got like 4 pictures of him ever on camera, and all at night on a community scrape. Mm-hmm. And he showed up. So I almost shot him opening day. Well, we can do it in a whole story thing,
right?
But we'll talk strategy more.
Yeah, that's fine. That actually, the setup where you killed him actually sounds almost exactly like a farm that I used to hunt, and for 2 reasons. Because it bordered right next to a piece of property that we couldn't hunt, but it had been completely logged probably like 3 years prior to us hunting it. So it had some pretty good overgrowth in it. But dude, we had a stand that like it was on our side, and it was just in a little hedgerow because we could shoot our field, and we could also overlook that logged out area. And dude, every time I hunted that stand, all you would see all afternoon was just white racks just walking up and down that thing up, and you could
see
never
the rack, never see the body.
No, you literally like you would see movement, and I would like glass them, and it would just be white racks just walking through. And you could never pull them out of that
So
stuff.
what they're doing is paralleling your fields, catching the wind, because in the evening you'll get the thermal pull coming down the field into the woods.
Okay.
So they'll parallel it deeper in the woods, and they can smell what's going on 200 yards away up in the field without even have to go out there. That's why they wait till dark to come out.
Right.
And then those weird weather days where the pressure's different, the thermals aren't, the pressure's pushing the thermal differently, and then that's when they pop out like an hour before dark. Like you're sitting there like, oh, he's out in the field already.
Right.
And another thing you see when that happens is they run out in the field. They don't come out and then mill around the edge. They get out in the middle of the field as quick as they can, so they're safer.
Yeah, I've seen that a bunch where they don't even they just like pop their head out and then all of a sudden just
right to the middle.
They'll look to see there's nothing in the field, and then they'll shoot out there because they know danger's on that edge.
And what you said about going right up the middle is also a really good point, because that same exact farm, it had an island right in the middle of the field.
Yep.
And
this one did too.
We parked the trucks, and you were looking out into the field, into the island. On the other side of the island was more field, and then the huge chunk of woods that we could hunt. And all of our stands were around that field edge, but we did have a stand right in that island. But where it was like a gun spot because it was so far from the other edge of the woods. But that one buck that I decoyed that I have on my wall at 10 point, that day I killed him. It was a morning hunt. It was really cold, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to. I was afraid that if I walked the edge, I was going to push him out. So I snuck up like right behind that island, and then cut through the island right to the base of the stand. And I like looked out in the field and saw there wasn't anything out there. So I actually put a decoy out like 20 yards out, and I got back up. And like as soon as daylight came, they were just pouring out of every corner. And I know that I ended up shooting a buck over the decoy, but I knew it wouldn't have happened if I had to walk those edges, because I think they were just inside waiting, you know. Because like day broke, doe started coming out to feed because there was still some beans there that hadn't been picked yet, and then just the bucks just started following like crazy.
Yeah. So to circle back, I'm not afraid to hunt mornings.
Right.
Some people say early season don't hunt mornings, but that's false. Like you hunt when the deer are there.
Right.
My best hunt ever was in October, like first week of October. I was sitting on these like 3 or 4 huge historic old oak trees that have been dropping for 100 years. I had 22 deer come by me at before 8:30 in the morning.
Wow!
In a finger of woods, like literally, I could see through the woods on both sides. Had 22 deer. That I never had 22 deer on camera ever on that property.
Really?
And it's just because that was a hot oak tree on an early October morning.
Right.
So you just got to be. It's all situational.
Right.
Food, it's all food in that early season.
You like hunting feed trees?
It all depends on what's there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna
like acorns.
I don't
white
search
oaks.
out acorns necessarily, but I do like to be in the vicinity of them.
Right.
I like to be. I'm still even early season. I'm in the beds
bed hunting
and trying to shoot them coming out of the beds, going to the acorns.
Going to the acorns.
Yeah.
Do you think they stay? So what they're doing is staging
I'm a
on
little too
acorns,
aggressive.
and then they'll stage on acorns
it
till it
works.
gets dark, and then slip out to the ag. You think that's what they do, or do you think they'll just stay on those acorns all night?
It depends on the deer.
Depends, just what they want.
I've had deer, not even touch the acorns and walk right past them, go right to the crop fields.
Right. Yeah.
And not a lot of places I hunt have crops. Some of it's big woods where it's zero crops anywhere.
Yeah.
And then the acorns are key. You have to chase the crop. Like you literally have to put more time in looking for the oaks that are dropping than you would you would hunting. Yeah.
And when you find a hot oak tree, what does that look like? Is it like poop?
Yeah.
Poop.
And it's all poop and tracks is all that matters to me.
Leaves ruffle up.
Well, squirrels and turkeys do that too.
Right.
Fresh poop is like key.
Yeah.
Like if I find a soda can green turd, that's like I'm stopping what I'm doing, hunting there.
You're thinking that's definitely a mature buck?
Yeah, that's what I've always heard too.
Yeah, most of the does, for the majority of the does I see, there are like pellets.
Right.
And the bucks seem to be more
logs.
Solid. Yeah, logs. Not to get too graphic. But yeah, when it looks like a Sprite can laying there on the ground, you hunt it.
So I found a spot that has multiple big white oak trees with pretty good access. It's kind of like a weird spot. You can walk pretty much right to it, go right up a tree. I picked a tree out.
Before you go any farther, I would observation. That's all I would do. I would sit waste the hunt, sitting out from it, watching
That's what I want to do.
And then just burn a hunt doing that, and then make sure the wind's the same the next day, and go in there on the same exact, and watch their patterns. Okay. They're going to poke out and move around different ways. So I would watch them, how they're feeding, and you'll get different groups coming in different angles. So you want to position yourself so you're not getting busted on the first group of deer.
Or else your whole night's shot.
Once they blow, they're all going to hear it. Yeah. And then the next ones that will come in will be on alert.
Yeah, on edge.
And then if you try to shoot, they'll duck your arrow,
Yeah.
But how many years have you been hunting?
I've been hunting since I was 10. I shot my first deer when I was, I think, 12 with a bow.
How long did it take you to really figure out mature deer? Like, when did you really start, focusing on it, I should say?
So I'm 43, so it's been 30 years.
Okay.
I was taught to shoot everything I saw.
Right.
And any buck you saw was shot.
Right.
That's how I was taught. My grandfather, he didn't teach me to hunt. My brother, I have an older brother that was 10 years older than me, and him were bow hunted together, and we kind of learned together.
Right.
My parents didn't hunt, so it was kind of a learning experience from the start. But we always were mobile, always had climbers.
Right.
We hunted just deer sign and deer themselves, and then we kept pressuring them. But because I never let the little ones go, I never got into the big ones. And I was, 21 when I shot my first real rack buck. I shot a bunch of little velvet spikes and forkhorns. Growing up. Mm-hmm. And they're 1.5-year-olds. Then I finally shot a racked buck during the rut on a buddy's property. He just let me hunt it, and that kind of fueled me a little bit. But I wasn't really hunting much then because I was young and out just having fun with friends.
Right.
And then when my uncle got a primo farm in Cecil County here, and he invited me, just me and him, to hunt it, and I put a stand up in a pinch point where I thought a big deer would run through on the edge of a marsh. And one November I sat in there in the morning, and it was opening day of duck season. All the duck hunters were in there quacking and talking. I could hear them plain as day talking, and they were pushing the deer out of the swamps.
Right.
And that helped me. So it got a doe going, and I think I had 13 or 14 deer come running by me. And I had 3 nice bucks come by me, and the first one was a big mature buck. I think he was like a 4-year-old. He got to 15 yards. I stopped him. I yelled at him and screamed at him because he wouldn't stop.
Right.
He slammed on the brakes, and I heart shot him.
Nice.
And I watched him fall over. And then that's what fueled me. I was about 30 years old when that happened.
Okay.
So I've only been really into it for 10 years. In the past 3 years, I've been regressing a little bit and just enjoying hunting.
Right.
I've been shooting just whatever feels good.
Right.
I don't care about the rack size now. But I got the fire again this year, so I think I'm gonna.
When you shoot one as big as the one you shot, it's kind of like that's like that. That's like the tippy top.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there?
It put a void kind of it was kind of weird how to explain it. But well, after I shot him, I was ready to go hunting again. Like once it was done, it was 2 months of chasing that buck, and I lost weight. I lost. I missed tons of work. I missed my family. I mean, I did a ton of stuff, and hunted every second I could after that buck.
Right.
And it was all on 3 acres.
Wow.
Like it was a 400-acre farm, and I only hunted 3 acres of that whole farm. Because I knew that's where I would kill him.
Yeah.
But I had a feeling the Holt from day one I saw him, I had a feeling I was going to shoot him. Like I just knew.
That year that you shot him, was that the first time you had an encounter with him? Like,
yeah, I've never been on the property
prior
ever.
to that.
Well, I've been on the property goose hunting, and I went with a buddy like turkey hunting a few times.
Gotcha.
Like, just sitting with him, not hunting. And he had the place for like 10 years. It was a lease.
Okay.
Or maybe it was 8 years, but finally they kept asking me every year, yeah, you want to get in? I'm like, nah, I'm not going in. I got other places. So finally one year I was like, oh yeah, I'll do it. I in the summer went and set the field, and I had like 40 deer come out and like 16 bucks, and I was sitting there and I was videotaping it all. And I looked over and he was in the beans already, and I didn't see him. And then he just stood up with his rack, and he was almost fully grown at that point, and full velvet, and it was insane. And I started shaking. Like I was sitting there, I was 200 yards away with the video camera, and I was shaking. And I packed up as soon as he cleared the hill, and took off and started calling a couple buddies that were close to me. And I was shaking and going home, and I was telling them, and they were like, no way. I was like, wait till you see this video. And I thought he was like a 180s buck, and they were guessing him as like a 180s buck, and what he became was shocked me. Absolutely shocked me. Until the day I shot him, I didn't know what he was.
Right.
Well, he
That's
grossed
crazy.
like over 203.
He was 203 and 6/8.
Insane, dude.
John.
I mean, I videoed that one down in Barkley that Carl ended up killing the next year.
The one your buddy shot?
Yeah, and when he shot it, it was big, but the year before, I think it was bigger. And it was no 200, but it had to be, I would bet 180 it would have scored.
Oh, yeah.
They're close to it. And I remember videoing that thing, like, it was the biggest deer I'd ever seen. You know, I was like, I didn't even know what was happening. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, I'd seen, decent deer, but nothing that ever.
Yeah, I was just grew up waterfowl hunting, and then like, I don't know, just kind of, I ran in the Holt that year you shot that, the one down there in the public, and we just kind of like started talking again, like I went off and hunted, and then we started texting each other and hunting more and more. But I was a waterfowl guy, I never really cared about deer. For some reason, I started kind of bow hunting a little bit, and then like chase, trying like, I want to get in front of a mature buck. I want to see one in person. And then as soon as I shot that first one, it just like it changed something in me where I was like, I could care less about a damn goose. Like
when it happened the first time, like to you, and I kind of told you this, that you're going to change your mindset on what kind of deer you want to shoot. Yeah. But you're going to be very disappointed because it's way harder than you think it is. Because that next year after, like, I shot mine in 2010, my first big mature buck, and then that next year, 2011, I was on to some couple big ones, and I was holding out. I was passing deer that any other day I would never pass, and like I would shoot a little basket rack 8-pointer in a second, and I was passing dozens of those things. Now I'm like, all for a big buck. So 2011 got skunked because my standards just went way up, and it was fun, but it was frustrating. Yeah. Then I shot my next big one in 2012, early season, and then once I did that deer was kind of a fluke. I knew about the deer. It just, my preparation and stand set up on that spot just proved that it worked. And me and another guy shot 5 bucks out of that one stand that year. Wow.
I just think it's crazy how in just 12 or 13 years, how much you've learned and how much knowledge you have to, exactly figure out like where the mature deer are going to be, how to hunt them, how to, locate them and all that. It's crazy.
So I'm not great at locating. Like I don't drive around like he does and glass and do, like, I kind of luck into seeing them. Once I see them, then I can break down the area and hunt it that way.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, what do you, when you go to so say you're going to a public piece for the first time, or we'll say a public piece. What do you look like? Where do you start?
I go right to water.
Right to water.
Yeah, I'll skip field edges. I'll go through all their bedding and get past them and go right to the water and find out what's there by their tracks. Like,
So you go to water
That's
to find
exactly
the
what I
tracks.
told.
You're looking
Yeah.
for big tracks.
yeah.
That's exactly what I told Philly Dan,
But
or when he was trying, but in the,
Yeah.
you know where I'm talking about.
Yeah.
What,
Like,
his place?
yeah, I mean, like he was asking the same thing, like
What-
you know,
where do you even begin?
he's like, where would you put something if where would you put a camera on this property? And I told him the same thing, like this time of year, water.
Yeah.
like you gotta
Yeah.
find the water,
We're gonna
man.
get into
Yeah,
like, more mosquitoes the better. It's keeping hunters out.
Right.
Like, I'll endure
I know it's
for a minute.
I know a spot you can get into a lot of mosquitoes.
I've been in spots where they could carry you away, literally. I mean, there was so many of them sitting on your hand. You would black, like, your arm would be blacked out. It was horrible.
me itchy
Some
thinking
places
about
are
it, dude.
horrible.
We went and did that Eastern Neck Island hunt down there at Bogles. Me and my buddy Pat went down.
Tidal
You met
Marsh.
Pat.
Tidal Marsh with stale water is the
Dude,
worst.
we went to
Sika hunting.
We went to Bogles down there at Eastern Neck Island for that gun hunt that they do, because it's like they do a gun hunt because it's a federal wildlife refuge, so they have like their own. It's not like state rules. It's a federal
Yeah.
refuge. They have
It
federal
doesn't
rules.
count against your tags. and
Right,
everything.
yeah. So you can use a straight walled rifle in the rut on the federal. So we went there. Dude,
Didn't you like Nazi shit?
we didn't see a single deer, and we must have got bit by 6,000 mosquitoes. My buddy Pat sent me that video of the guy. You ever see the guy like playing spoons?
Yeah.
He said that's what I look like in the stand. He's like, "There's no way we're killing a deer in this." I'm like swatting up, just like you couldn't sit still. I was like, "There's no way. Let's just go to Harborside and drink beer because we're not going to kill a deer like this."
So what I do to combat like the things that everybody is afraid of, like early season, I love early season.
Yeah.
Ticks, chiggers, mosquitoes.
It keeps people away.
Like, I don't put any poison on my body. I don't do anything on my clothes. I just pick them off. I just deal with it. I try to eat like garlic. I don't know if it works or not, but to get it in my blood system, hoping it propels them. Double layer everything on my body except for my eyes.
Right.
So I'm doing hat, head mask, gloves, double shirt, double pants, just so the mosquitoes don't bite through it.
Can't get through it. It's too
The two
thick.
layers seem to work, except for on your shoulders where it's real tight. Then I try to keep my shoulders back, kind of bunch it up, or wear a little more puffy shirt, and I just deal with it. And then every once in a while you have to smack the
I was
head.
about to say, it's so hard to fight that instinct, like when you hear
Yeah.
like to do this, you know, like
in your ear.
when we were down there Sika hunting, it was like that. Like you're wearing a net on your head, and so you know they're not going to bite you, but like you hear them.
Yeah.
Like, so
Gives
you're
me
just like,
nerves.
you're just like,
Yeah.
you're just trying to fight that urge to do that. But the ticks don't bother me. But man, one time I got into chiggers real bad, and I'm like,
I've only got chiggers one time and it was horrible. I had to go.
Yeah.
I had to go to the
hate
freaking
it.
urgent care.
yeah, dude, they're the
It was
worst.
so bad, dude. I
They're
got into
awful.
it in Delaware. We were teal hunting
Oh, yeah.
in the marsh, and I got home and was like, "What
I'm itching
is
just sitting
this,
here
dude?"
thinking about all this
I
stuff.
had these like.
Make all your listeners itch now.
It was awful. I was like, "What the hell are these things?" And it was bad, dude.
they
It
are
was
the
nasty. Ugh.
So when you're on public land specifically, since that seems to be, you know, what you're after now, are you, because there's so many people in there at all times scouting, are you worried about like
Guilty.
your scent control? Are you worried about running cameras if you can?
I do absolutely zero scent control. I use perfume type shampoos. I wear my regular deodorant. I wear same clothes that I might hunt in 2 or 3 times. If I can smell the clothes, then I'll wash them, kind of thing. So I'm not against scent control. I have my good buddy that is full into it, and it's what makes him confident.
Right.
So it's all about confidence. I play the wind like you hear, and I definitely get busted once in a while.
Right.
That's just part
but
of the game.
I don't mind getting busted because it shows me the thermal and the wind a little bit.
So you learn the spot.
So if you look at the positive side of it, so that deer picked me up on this trail 15 yards away over there, even though my wind's blowing 90 degrees to it. It's because there's a thermal pull to it. Then next time I know I need to be that down a little bit from it that way.
It also shows a lot that you're willing to waste a hunt to learn those kind of things, where a lot of people either, most people can't because they can only hunt like a Saturday or a Sunday, but like, I mean, I think that's also probably a big thing into killing a lot of mature deer is you have to be be doing that, whereas a lot of people aren't. Me included, I'm not. I can't.
Being mobile, being aggressive, being able to change your schedule at a moment's notice is all really key things.
Right.
Like, I try never to burn a hunt. Like, I'm always trying to be in the hunt. But, like, when I say burn a hunt, that means I saw a deer 100 yards away. Like, at that point, I don't care what happens. I know my target's there.
You got that intel, and you know.
That is kind of a burned hunt, but I'm still in the game. Like, I'm still there. A deer could walk up. But yes, I have set field edges and watched them hundreds of yards away just so I can see the exact trail they're coming out on.
Right.
And then when I hunt, I'll go in on that trail and try to get into the woods off the field edge a little bit, and I'll walk on the exact same trail they come out on. That way, if they get past me, they smell me and they back up.
Okay.
So there's
That's
a little
smart.
tactic.
Right.
But you're burning a hunt doing that, because once that happens, he's never coming back on that trail.
You told
But
me that like
they do a two-step. I call it, like, so they'll put their head down, they'll whip their head up real quick.
Two steps back.
They'll do a dead stare out in the field, and they do 2 steps back and turn 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Almost every deer does it, and so the second he whips his head up, you pull back, and then he does his 2 steps back and turns 90 degrees, and you shoot.
Yeah, you were telling
It
me.
works.
That's a good
It
idea.
works so many times.
That's a really good idea.
Like, you use your scent against them.
I've seen them do that.
Yeah.
You know, where they've crossed the trail where I've walked in. You know, and it is amazing when
Yeah,
they
you were
hit that
telling
line.
they
How
know.
me and
fast they
Thomas
stop.
about that.
Yeah.
How you like? Don't you like sometimes get to your tree and you'll walk out and like
Yep.
purposely put your ground scent on the
I'll
ground
rub my
where
boots
you
on a bush
where he knows he's
15
gonna
yards
walk.
away. Yep.
So you're setting.
So
you
he
almost
stops
set him
and
up.
backs up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he goes there, smells it, backs up, and you're already anticipating that
But-
what he's going to do.
Yeah, so that only works if you're doing like 10, 15, I would say under 15, maybe 10 yards max, because reaction time, they can jump your arrow at 10 yards.
Right.
That alert buck at 10 yards, he can jump your arrow.
Right.
Like, so when you shoot for that hard, at that hard angle, it takes literally an inch of drop, and you're almost into his shoulder, into his spine, and you're going to lose him.
I try to do the same thing with that decoy. Like, I run a lot of times during the rut, I'll run a doe decoy, and I try to position it. I think we've talked, all three of us talked about this before. I try to position it because they always circle downwind of it to get behind it. So I try to position it where when they circle downwind, it puts them between me and the decoy, which is usually within 20 yards.
So the scary thing about like doing that for me, like I've tried it a couple times. They're on alert,
Right.
Because they don't know what it is, and when they circle downwind, they're really on alert. And like, so the only time I've done it and it actually worked, I shot at the buck and he ducked my arrow and completely missed him. And I was videotaping at the time, and I did the little pin on the screen where my arrow knock was, and that buck belly literally touched the ground almost, and he ducked my arrow at like 20 yards.
Wow.
Like so I was aiming low at the armpit, like trying to heart shoot him, and it went like 3 inches above his back.
Wow.
I mean, he ducked that much.
That's so quick.
Yeah, I mean, because
And he was yards, too.
he was staring at that decoy, stomping, and then when he heard that bow go off, he just hit the ground.
Are you running a buck decoy or a doe one?
That was a doe. It was one of those blow up, like doll looking ones, like the Tinks ones, and they were like free. I shoved her head into a sticker bush, and just her butt was sticking out, and that buck walked right to
Step,
it.
bro, I'm stuck.
He walked right to that thing because he knew it was a deer, but his head was in the bush. So I was like,
For like
Rub a little estrus on her ass.
we run ours is just a piece of plywood that we cut out.
Yeah.
You know, it's 2-dimensional.
put a piece of toilet paper on its tail, and then that toilet paper will blow in the wind a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
We've done that before, and it's worked.
I'll tell you, like I've said it before, and you probably even on here, like the does hate it.
Yeah.
Like when they see it, they're stomping and blowing and
Yep.
stuff. So like, you really have to like pick and choose when you run it, because if you're in an area that you're hunting, you know, has a lot of does, like I choose not to run it because I don't want it to. You know, my chances of a buck chasing those actual does is better than one coming out and seeing that decoy. You know, but you know, I've shot one good buck over it, and
So-
I've had
It's worked
tons
for
of
you.
encounters with small ones.
Yeah, so it's worked for you. Like my encounters were the opposite, and I seemed to have more negative. Like you were saying, it was alerting a lot more deer than I wanted to be alerted. I kind of like, so when I shoot a deer, I get down like I just did something wrong. Like I'm trying to sneak out of there. Like I just robbed somebody.
Right.
Like I get down, I grab my deer, and I get out of there as quick as I can. Like I almost like to preserve the spot, even though I may never come back. But
Right.
I kind of, maybe the next guy can have luck, but I don't know. It's just an instinct I do. I try to never let anybody know that I'm there.
Right.
People and deer.
Yeah, we kind of do the same thing. Like even on our private spots, like just because we're so worried of, and we're probably already boogering up the woods by trail and deer and stuff through there.
Yeah.
But like when we go in, like we don't talk loud. Like, we talk quiet as we're trailing it or tracking the blood and stuff. And then when we find it, like, we just get it out of there as quick as we can, get it to the field edge before we'll gut it and stuff. Just try to, like, I know that we're probably messing up as we're laying scent, as we're trailing, but it feels good to know we're being kind of quiet, and trying to get it out of there as easy as possible.
So I hunt a lot of the swamps now because the public land's loaded with them. It's great. And I drag the deer out of the swamp, usually, and try to get cleaner water and then get it up on a bank, and then that's where I'll gut the deer. I won't leave it down in the swamp because people like to go down there looking, and I don't want to gut pile. That one buck I shot, I had 2 years later a guy come up in the parking lot and told me he found a dead buck, because I found it late, it was already rotten, and I ended up cutting the head off. And 2 years later a guy told me he found a buck down in the marsh with the head cut off.
Oh, really?
It was my buck.
Wow.
Like, just it was a guy from Pennsylvania that was traveling
a couple years
like
ago?
2 or 3 years, like 2 or 3 hours away. He was coming down there to hunt.
Right. The public land is a whole different animal, because I see posts, like, every year I'll see at least one post where somebody shot one on public land, and, like, by the time them going to the truck to get their stuff and come back, somebody stole the deer.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, it's hard for me to fathom that people
Why would
actually
you steal
do
somebody
that.
else's deer?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, but I heard a guy go by in the dark, like on a trail nearby, and then like 3 hours after sunup, another guy comes in with a cart. So I'm assuming the guy shot a deer. So I'm at that point, I could see the guy going through the woods, and I was like, all right, I'm getting down. I'll go over there and see if they need a hand. I walk out. There's a cart laying there with a deer on it, a Raven crossbow, with that $4,000 bow, and some hunting gear, and there is not a soul in sight. Like, it's all laying there.
Grab it and roll.
I stood there for a good 10 minutes before they showed back up.
Wow.
I was like,
That's
it's
risky.
pretty
At least
trusty,
start
but
with the crossbow and just got out of there.
Right.
so they already had the deer on the cart.
You
They
should have
just
took the
it off.
crossbow and thrown it in the swamp.
I mean,
you're really hoping people don't do that,
You
It's
gotta
like-
be trusting, but
Right.
I don't leave anything in the
You should
woods
have thrown
in
the
public.
crossbow in the swamp or the river.
I don't know. It's crazy, man. I don't know. Public land is.
So I got
the Wild Wild
really
West.
off the wall crazy tactic that I use on public.
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
Is it running 40 cameras on one piece?
No, and I don't run any cameras. I just use him. And Dan does it for me.
That's a good tactic.
Now, we share info, but most of mine's visual info, and his is camera info.
Right.
So this tactic is weird. You've heard of a buck J-hooking a bed.
Right.
So he's coming back to bed. He J-hooks it to get downwind to smell the bed to see if it's safe to come back in. So I was like, well, why can't I do that to the buck while he's in the bed? Biggest thing is you're coming in upwind. So this is where I was talking about where I'm not afraid to come in upwind.
Right.
So I'll start about 200 yards out from where a known bed is, and I'll start walking with the wind blowing to it. And a lot of times deer don't get alerted, like they don't get scared and blown out too much at 200 yards. They'll get on edge, but usually they'll stay tight in their bed. So I'll get down, as I'm getting closer, then I'll start cutting away from their wind, and then I'll walk right beside their beds within 50 yards, go past their bed, turn, and then come back up underneath their bed, like J-hooking, behind them.
Okay.
So they're alerted, but you have to be extremely quiet walking past them because they're still focused on a scent up by 200 yards away. And then after a couple hours, once I get my tree, they're settled down. And then when they get up, they typically don't go towards the wind. They come out the backside.
So you're like J-hooking their J-hook.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I shot at a monster 8-pointer doing this, and it worked perfectly on this one situation. I've done it. Like, it's all situational, like I was saying. Like, every bed's different, every buck's different. In certain areas, you can't do it because the wind doesn't cooperate. But it has worked for me, and I shot at the buck and bounced the air off his belly and never saw the buck again.
Wow.
It stuck in the ground underneath him, and he jumped and then stood there, until it got dark, and then he walked off in the dark.
Do you think, like, because I can see how that tactic could work on public, especially like at Fair Hill, especially if you knew that he was in there, because he's going to watch you walk. But I guess if you walked far
Past
enough
him?
up, past him, that you could
Does he just
come
think-
back down, or like once he relaxes a little bit, you could circle back down on him.
And that's why the mountain bikers that are hunting there do so well, because they ride their bikes in on the trails and
They're not thinking
they're going
anything
right
of
past
it.
the deer,
Yeah.
past them, ditching their bike, and then walking back up to them.
Makes sense.
It's the same exact scenario, but
Right.
like it's a little extreme in Fairhill because they're so used to seeing people.
Yeah.
The second you step off that trail, though, it's a different story. They know you're in the woods,
Right.
Right.
and that's when they bolt 200 yards away. You see, a dozen tails running away.
Yep. They know. Yeah, they know when you've stepped off the trail into their domain. They can tell.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I just like the bed tactic thing for me is it's really hard for me to overcome that because I just don't believe in bed hunting that much, because I just don't. I
They
just
bed
feel
different
like
places.
I feel like they hop around so
Oh,
much.
absolutely,
It's so hard to pinpoint at what point they're
Now,
going to be in which bed.
Do you
know
think
what I
different
mean?
properties are different? Like there's.
Well,
you
it's
think
time of the year, time of the
Right,
food.
true.
So, what did I tell you this past year? I was like, I know where buck beds in the second week of November.
Right.
I went in there on one hunt and I shot that buck in his bed
Yeah, he did
this year.
Yeah, last season.
And I couldn't go. I didn't go in there the day I wanted because there was 2 cars in the parking lot, and I didn't want to mess up their
Yeah,
hunt.
right.
So I waited 2 days.
You went back in the morning.
Went back in the morning.
Yeah.
And I climbed a tree while he was in his bed in the dark. And when the sun came up, I made a grunt. He stood up out of his bed, walked right to me, and I shot him.
Wow.
Like I know that spot. I've learned that spot, and it took 5 years of hunting that spot to figure that out.
Is there a specific terrain feature in that spot that they're associating to?
So this is marsh again. It's a finger of marsh that jets up in the woods, and then there's a kind of a high mountain laurel bank.
Okay.
And it's dry up there, and the mountain laurel's thick, so he was laying in the mountain laurel. I could not physically see him, even though he was like 25 yards away,
Right.
or 30 yards ish. But when he stood up, I could see him.
Right. I jumped one. Like I pretty much walked from like me to you away from one without even seeing it. It was bedded in Mount Laurel like that too. Like we had this trail cut out to walk into the stand, and every year this one tree that was on that trail always had a rub on it.
Yep.
Every year, and it was a good sized tree, so I know they were always good deer. But never once was there ever a deer bedded there until this one time I walked in, just looking dead ahead, walking in, and from me to you, he just jumped right out of the mountain laurel, and ran right away. But
They'll
like,
let you get past, and
yeah, that's what I was saying. Like the bed thing. Like I've only had one time where I knew there was a deer bedding in the same general area all the time, just
Yeah.
because
They just have, like, satellite beds all over that
night
area.
at the same exact time he would show up at
So
this
you knew
one
he
spot.
was close in there.
Yeah, so I knew he was in a court area and staging there,
And this is
then
private, right?
Yeah, this was.
so that I wouldn't like. I don't necessarily like want to hunt beds in the private because I'm not trying to blow the property out. Public
okay.
gets pushed so much with
have
people.
to.
Like those deer hold tight within. So I call it a bubble, a buck's bubble. I want to be in his bubble to hunt him. Like if I'm not in that bubble, then I'm out of the game.
Right.
And I mean, I've come out and had 10 dudes standing in the same parking lot as my truck was that night, and I never saw one of them. It's because I was
Right.
in the buck's bubble,
Right.
hunting them, and they weren't in it.
They're on edges
Yeah.
and big woods.
Probably over scrapes.
Like,
Yeah.
and it took a lot to learn, like figure stuff out, and it's a lot of just hunting a lot, and you just
Right.
kind of learn it. And
Are you studying? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, no.
Are you studying like maps, like
I'm
of those
absolutely
areas?
horrible maps. Like
Okay.
I will look at maps to see like potential trails or like if I think he's bedding somewhere and I think he might come through somewhere, I might look at a topo map to kind of see the terrain,
Right.
how it falls. Topo maps are great for learning the thermals because you
Yeah.
can see kind of like how it flows on those topos. I am absolutely like I have some friends that I can they can take a map and say where would you hunt, and they can boop.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I can't do that. Like
Right.
I
I'm
like
a
to do
boots on
that.
the ground type of person,
Me
and
too.
I start at the water and work my way back.
Right.
So
That's why I like shed hunting so much. It's just like you can
You
I
learn
mean,
a lot.
You can just when it's wide open, you
Yeah.
can learn so much.
And
about a
like
piece
you
of
can
property.
find those thickets that are like if you find an area that's like still super thick in March.
Right.
I always if I'm walking in the woods, trying to shed hunt,
Trying.
I'll find like an area that's still really dense with like a high stem count in like March. I'll drop a pin on it
Yeah.
because it's super thick and the big buck could hide out there in the season maybe,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good spot. It's just a good spot to like go back to and maybe look around during the season.
Yep.
So I've been teaching Dan a little bit of this, but secondary food sources. So like people who feed corn to deer, corn piles.
Yeah.
I think there's a study, and I think corn is like less than 10% of their total input of food for the day.
Okay. So it's actually like really bad for them, too.
90% of the food they're eating other places, of sticks, leaves, greens. Like,
right.
So where is that 90%?
That's a good point.
So I hunt a lot of secondary food sources, and one of my favorites is in the swamp is the jewelweed.
Jewelweed.
And in early September, bucks will go in the jewelweed and eat it. And they'll rub their velvet on the jewelweed and shed their velvet. So if I walk the edge of jewelweed patches and I see it ripped out of the ground and laying on top,
you showed me that.
I stop instantly, get in tree, because that means there's a buck within really close to that bedding nearby, and he's coming down there in the evening to rub his velvet on the jewelweed and eat it.
How the heck did you figure
Usually
that out?
where the jewelweed grows,
I saw it.
Right.
is where thermals fall.
So when I shot my big one on the public a few years ago, I found 3 or 4 big swashes of jewelweed ripped out of the ground.
They have like orange flowerings on the top.
Yeah, it's like it's like a water weed. It grows right in the water.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it, but it has little tiny, like purpley or orangey flowers sometimes.
I wonder if they like it because it contains a lot of water.
I think that's 100% what it is.
So they're getting water and food at the same time.
I've watched multiple bucks in groups in anywhere from September to mid of October.
Really?
Go into these patches and stand there for hours
and just eat.
Wow. Huh.
Like, so they say, this buck's
crazy.
nocturnal and he doesn't come out till dark. These bucks were in there at like 5:30, and by 7:30 they were starting to make their way towards the fields.
Wow.
Yeah, like it just it gives you the extra hunting time,
right.
But it's boring once the deer get up and move on. The last 2 hours is dead because they're
already
at
gone.
the fields.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'd rather shoot a buck at 5:30 and get them to the truck before 7:30, before dark, than I would sit in the field and shoot right last light.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that about that. I've always liked hunting swamps just because I know that that's where they live, you know, 'cause it's so thick and nasty. They can get in there, they can bed, they can be in there without really ever needing to come out for most part.
Yep.
And we've had a couple good properties like that, but the one we hunt currently, like, the swamp, there is a swamp, but it's off of us. It's on the neighboring property. But like I mean, we've only hunted 2 years, but every time the bucks come to the field, that's literally where they're coming from. They come right out of that corner, and I know that they're coming from that swamp.
Yeah.
Because everywhere else is just strips of woods and then ag on each side. You know?
So if I was hunting that property, I would sit an observation in the field way out early, like maybe the week before the season starts. Pinpoint the exact trail they're coming out on, and opening day I would take a stand with me, walk in there like 4 hours before dark, 5 hours, and just sweat it out. Climb a tree about 30 yards in down that trail and wait.
You think it could work on public land too, or you think that's more of a private situation? Yeah, I guess
I don't know. I'm just so skeptical of doing any like patterning deer on public. I don't know why. It's in my own
you have
mind.
no control either. Though. That's the thing. Like one person can walk in and blow your whole plan. Then it's over.
I mean, it could be 10 guys there every week, videotaping the field, and like you were down there videotaping a field. Like I could walk in the next day and have no idea you were there. And you might have got up half an hour before dark and blew the whole field out, and I didn't know.
Yeah.
So
it's all there's very
or the guy across the street is walking his dog over there to take a piss.
Or riding his 4-wheeler down
and
the
they
property
look all the deer.
Right.
You know?
It is funny what you said. Like what you said, if that was your property, how you would hunt that. That's pretty much exactly what happened. It was September last year was the first year we had this specific piece, and I showed up and we had some stands set where we knew they were coming out or whatever, and the farmer was like, "Look, they always come out right here."
Dude, I would shoot a deer opening day there every day.
Yeah, he's like, you need to be hunting over here. Well, the guy that hunted last, he had a box blind there, like a wooden one. Well, I was like, all right, I'll go hunt that. And I got there, and I couldn't shoot my bow out of it because I only had the little window. And I kept telling myself, like, man, just kind of like nestle right up underneath it, because I could have like sat on my knees right under it, you know. And I decided not to, and I went all the way across the field and sat in a stand pretty far away. And dude, like an hour before dark, like that giant, he came out with another 8-point, literally walked right past that shooting house. Of course. And they all they came out from bedding and they circled, and the corner they went in was right going to that swamp.
Yeah.
And so we put a stand in right where they went in, and a stand where they came out.
Yeah.
And those were the two hot spots all year long. It didn't matter what time of year it was; they were coming out either here or here.
But if you have that intel already, and you're golden. Like
Right.
you don't need to ever go in there ever.
Right.
Like you just observe them, see that they're coming out still a week before the season. Check the wind. Say if it's a northwest wind, check the app. See if opening day is northwest wind. That means
Right.
they're probably going to duplicate what they're going to do. It's early season; they're going to do the same thing. And surprise them on that first hunt. And who cares if you blow them out? They'll be back in a month.
Right.
I have noticed when I've got those bigger deer on camera that come out to that field, I always check the wind. So I'll see when I have a deer that I'm interested in, I get them on camera, and I'll always go back and see what wind he came out to that spot to that particular area in the field. And it seems like every time I would watch those deer that you were watching the other night, those big ones would always show up on a west-northwest wind. Seemed like every time that we got a west-northwest wind, they popped out and they walked out of that corner into the middle of the field.
So I've always
On the south
wondered.
when they wouldn't do it, wouldn't get as many. They'd be there, but they'd come out on a different area.
Yeah, they're betting
So-
somewhere else.
Yeah,
Beds
betting
based on
somewhere
wind.
else. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Is that what you think it is? Because I've always wondered too. Like, is it really a wind thing or is it more a pressure thing? Like the atmospheric pressure. You know what I mean? Like maybe on those
right.
northwest winds,
You're getting
maybe
more
the
high pressure.
Right, compared to some of the
Yeah.
other winds. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And when I say they bed somewhere else, it could be 50 yards away, and they're just
Right.
looping a different way to
Yeah.
come out. It like a bedding area has when I'm hunting a buck bed, I'm not purposely sitting right on his bed. I'm just in his area,
Right.
and sometimes it happens that I am on that bed. Sometimes he's 50 yards over here,
In a
and
different bed.
he might still come to me.
Right.
Because they don't necessarily lay in that dirt spot like you see on Midwest stuff. They might be in this cattail patch. They might be on this bank over here. They might be on a little tiny bowl on the bank looking down the marsh the next day.
Right.
Like I've had that happen where it's like a little bench cut into the bank where like a root ball pulled up, and they'll just bed up there during the day and watch down over the marsh.
Yeah.
Like,
they normally lay leeward. You think
nah,
or it doesn't really matter.
typically the wind is coming over the hill
Right.
down into the marsh,
Right.
and then they'll watch out into the
the wind
marsh.
at their back,
And it's usually
looking.
shaded really heavily, so if you're in the marsh looking up, you wouldn't be able to see them on the bank.
Really?
Yeah, so it's almost like a leaf canopy cave,
Right. Yeah.
and it's a flat spot that they don't roll down the hill when they fall asleep.
Yeah, we had one farm, and it was like a big, it was all basically a lot of field, and then the woods was like a big ditch, basically, right? So we could only hunt this side of the ditch, and all the deer would come off of this side of the ditch. And so, we had this south-facing slope, and everybody always talks about south-facing
Yeah.
slopes, you know. Well, the deer never bedded on it, ever. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And eventually, the last year we had the spot, I figured out that they were bedding on this face of the hill here because they were looking straight across, watching us walk right into the woods.
They're like, wait till dark tonight, boys.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, this makes sense
They're
now.
back
You know?
again. Yeah.
They're just it's just, you get so caught up on the hearing specific things all the time about, how to find them, how to,
You're like,
hunt 'em and stuff.
south-facing slopes out, and then he's on the east-facing slope watching your stupid ass walk around the south-facing slope. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, look at this dude.
Real popular guy, Dan Infault. Everybody watches the
Yeah.
Hunting Beast. I like watching his videos, but I treat a lot of stuff online as entertainment, and you get little things here and there. But the way he hunts, the way I hunt, the way you
beast
hunt,
style.
is all different.
Different, right.
Like private and public's different. I have a piece of private now that I can hunt. I didn't have much until last year. I picked up a piece, so now I have that again this year. But I do hunt that a little different, but I still hunt beds on that farm, even though it's only 100 acres.
And you're still in the marsh.
Yeah, it has lots. I got on the farm because it had marsh. It was not. It was like most of the property is marsh.
Right.
There's very
Yeah.
little anything else there, and I got it because of that. And it's loaded with deer.
Yeah. We had a
yeah.
farm right on Cabin John Creek, and we killed, not me, but the guys we hunt with, they killed 4 giants off of there, and every single one of them was killed as they were coming out of the swamp.
Yep.
Were they coming right out of cattails?
Literally right out of cattails, right out of Cabin John Creek.
What do you think? Do you think they just pick a spot and
Literally, dude.
Because sometimes you go to a marsh.
funneled up in, and
I mean, if they're
Everywhere looks really
if they're,
good in there.
they were
if
just
they're
coming right up
pressured,
out of there.
They will stand in water.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, how, to what extent do you think they'll go into, like, they'll just go into a frag
They'll
swamp
stand all
and just
day in
stand?
water.
Really?
Yeah, they don't need to lay down. They don't have to have a bed. Like,
Really?
if they're that like pressured and like need to hide, they will stand in belly deep water, just stand there all day.
I mean, those are the best pictures when you get pictures of them and they got mud
on their feet.
mud all the way up to their belly.
That's like at Tim's. He gets so many nice deer that come through there in that area, and usually it's during the rut and they're just kind of passing through his property. But every single one of those deer has mud up to their belly.
And every marsh
It
I've
is a
ever
good
been
area.
in has always had a mound of dirt out in it. That
Like
deer,
a muskrat hut or something, or just like
a old tree that fell down,
Right.
and the root kind of picked up just slightly, and it's literally like a trash can size. There'll
like
be
a drop spot.
Yeah, deer will bed on that.
like a high ground. So this spring I went in and was just kind of looking around some public, and I just was like, dude, screw it. I'm going to take knee boots and I'm going to get in the water and I'm going to look around. And I'd never done it until that day, and I went in there and I couldn't believe how many rubs were in water that was up to my knees that these bucks were running like in the rut running through, and like
yeah, they'll
scrubbing.
pin a doe down in there,
It was tore up,
and they'll
I'm like,
stand
what
there in
heck?
the water with her all day.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that. I went in there.
That's-
I mean, you
What
can
in
hear
the
them when
world?
they're in those cattails.
Splashing around.
You can hear them just
It-
like rolling through that shit when they're chasing does.
Yeah, you can't
but
be-
you can never see them.
Yeah, no.
And it
It's
sounds like they're right there.
It's
you
not
know?
good when it's like that. It means the pressure is really bad.
Yeah.
Like when,
Yeah,
when,
it's
they're-
not a good
when you're
thing.
finding that sign that deep into water, like it's just not good.
Yeah,
Like
that means
it makes me take a step back and kind of move to a different area.
really.
Yeah.
Because you know it's getting the
If
crap hunted out of it.
if I hunt it and I don't see anybody or see any sign of people while I'm hunting, I'll keep hunting it. But if I'm seeing no deer, no people, and that sign's in there, like I can see it from the stand, like deep in the water,
Yeah,
I know something's up because they're just,
Right.
that means people are just pushing it.
they've pushed them that far
Yeah.
to the point where they're just standing in water, like they're in water. Like it would have been up to like a buck's chest. Like he was standing in water that would have been that deep.
So I gotta ask, because we're a bait state, how do you feel about killing them over bait?
I've done it. I don't do. It's kind of the reason I hunt public now because it's no stands, no bait.
Right.
I kind of get mad when people leave stands in there, but I just don't care enough to do anything about it
Right.
because they're not supposed to. But I take mine in and out every time, so I would hope everybody else would do it, but they don't.
Right.
And I found bait on public multiple times.
You found corn piles? Mm-hmm. Really?
But I bait my backyard just mostly to
Just
watch
to
deer.
watch.
I have shot deer out of my backyard. I've shot mature buck kind of over bait one time. It wasn't a bait pile, but I had sprinkled some corn into a high grass, and it brought a bunch of does out, and they
Right.
were feeding in the grass, trying to find the kernels in there. They just smelled it, and that night a big buck came out and I shot him.
Yeah.
Right.
He came over because he saw all the does stand there.
Right.
Yeah, that's
That's how it's worked out for me every
Yeah, it
time. I've
wasn't-
never killed a mature one, like literally
No.
face down eating the corn.
Yeah.
It's more so that he was just pulled because of the,
the
does
does.
eating
Yeah.
the corn.
That's what I try to do down at like my brother's is I'll just
Right.
I'll
So-
bait the crap out of it because it keeps the does around, and then the bucks follow the does.
Yeah.
Here's
And-
another off the wall tactic. If I'm hunting a property that's heavily baited, I will walk in with a gallon Ziploc bag of corn, and then when I get to the tree that I want to hunt, like say 30 yards out, I say, all right, there's a tree I want to climb. I'll take the bag and open it up and start sprinkling it on my boots as I'm walking that last 30 yards to my tree. And surprisingly, the corn scent will overpower my boot scent enough that bucks or deer will cross it without getting alarmed.
And not care.
So I just do it for the last 30 yards to kind of break up that scent trail to my tree.
Right.
Makes sense.
I swear to God, I've thought about, you know how good Lucky Buck smells, right?
yeah,
It smells like
yeah.
sweet tarts.
That
you
would
know?
probably work too.
I swear to God, I
Kool-Aid.
I
You
put
probably put Kool-Aid in your boots.
right. I have like a tote that I keep all my clothes in, you know, and I swear to God, I've thought about putting my clothes in there and just sprinkling all that.
Dude,
Lucky
I thought about
That's basically what that nose jammer stuff is. I've
Yeah.
never used it, but I
Nose
smelled
jammer's
it.
gotta
It's like
smell.
vanilla.
I have it in my truck. You can smell it.
It
if
smells
you
like
want.
vanilla, like
Yeah,
extract.
Yeah,
Right.
I'll let you spray a little and smell it. It smells
strong.
like it is. I've thought about taking. This sounds retarded, but I've thought about taking my clothes and putting corn in a bin and putting my hunting clothes in the bin because
That makes sense.
So we've been doing that for years, but
Really?
putting pine branches in,
Right,
or
that's what I've done
So
too.
when you dump
I've done pine
when you dump
branches.
your 100-pound bag of corn on the
your-
ground,
put your clothes
all
in.
your clothes in the sack because all the oil's already in the sack.
yeah,
Right.
And it's got a
that's good
distinct
point.
smell.
Yeah.
And it's almost just like a cover scent.
I like rub pawpaws on my hands, a little bit on my face
So
sometimes.
Yeah.
so
So-
I stomp on local vegetation and fruit like pawpaws,
Okay.
and I'll smear my boots all over them. And when I get into the marsh, first thing I do is jump into the mud, and rub my boots in the mud real good, and then I'll walk in the water all the way to my tree.
Huh.
So I love water entrances. Like if I can get in the water and walk 100 yards, I'll do it. I'll go out of my way to get in the water so I can get to my tree.
No ground scent.
Yeah. I've always wondered that. I've never really had a good spot to do that, but that has always crossed my
Well,
mind. Like, water
It's funny
entrance.
because I pick spots because of that.
Right.
But a lot of times you also run into deer doing the same thing. The deer
Right.
will walk those. You ever seen deer walking down a creek and they'll go up a
Yeah.
bank a certain way?
Yeah.
It's because they're hitting all the thermals in the creek and then they're not leaving any trail to go up and feed. And if you so what I'm getting at is you watch the deer and do what they do.
Right.
Like use their tactics against them.
The rubbing the stuff on your hands, that's actually a really good idea because like I've always like you're like always sitting there like there's that awkward time of year where it's like too hot for gloves, like not and not cold enough for gloves, and it's like I just feel like my bare hands out there all the time. It's just
that
emitting
has
so much.
When I went
I
hunting-
feel naked without gloves on.
Yeah.
I wear the fingerless ones
you?
in the summer or in the early season, but I just feel naked not having anything on my hands. I don't know why.
Because I always wear, a face,
Yeah.
cover up the white on your face and stuff. But I'm like, man, my hands must just either
When I'd
like
be in the
just
ground
sticking
blind
out so bad.
and I was trying to shoot ears, like when I'd have all those does come in, because they will, I mean, they're neighborhood deer, they're dumb, but they'll still bust you and stomp and run away. I would literally, I could feel my hands start sweating when deer would come in because you get excited, and I would just start grabbing dirt and just rubbing dirt on my hands to try to knock the scent down.
Right.
I saw something this guy did, and I kind of want to try it. He said it's the only scent. It's not like a scent eliminator because I don't think you can ever eliminate your scent. No. You can do things to limit it, I think, but you'll never if a deer gets downwind of you, he's gonna smell you. But I think a cover scent could work a little better, just kind of mask it. This guy was taking black walnuts,
smelling.
and he would take them, and he'd have a 5-gallon bucket. He'd fill the bucket up with black walnuts. Then he'd fill it up with water, and he would let the walnuts sit in the bucket of water for a long time, and then he would strain it, and then dump the strained water from the black walnuts into bottles, spray bottles, and spray his clothes and wash his clothes in the black walnut scent. And he said it's the only thing that deer would get downwind of him, and they would never bust him because he would be covered in that scent. And they just thought it's just smell. They smell naturally in the woods, and it was enough to overpower his human scent that they didn't spook. I mean, they still probably smelled him a little, but it wasn't enough to.
I mean, the guys talk about all the time, putting their clothes next to a campfire or something. If somebody lives on the property, that's always burning a wood stove.
Right.
I've tried it all.
Yeah.
Beekeepers have those smoker things.
Right.
People do that. They'll make a little puffer thing and they'll puff themselves before they go out, kind of smoke themselves up.
It's crazy too because I know my one buddy. He smokes cigarettes, and he'll sit there in the stand and smoke cigarettes and shoot deer.
Yeah.
I've heard
Shoot
people.
big deer.
My
purposely put
grandfather did it for years.
Yeah.
People
Right,
put
flannel.
cologne on. Sometimes curiosity kills them. So
Yeah.
Right.
Or smoking a little. My one buddy swears by it. He said he loves to get up in the tree and spark one up, and
I don't know if they
sometimes the
eat it
deer
or not. I
don't
had
they?
a property that butted right up to a wheat
I've
farm.
heard that they like
I
to
don't
eat
know.
it. The hemp. They eat hemp.
Maybe.
That's green.
yeah,
I mean, that's the thing. They're
I think
they're eating
deer-
green leafy stuff
anything
because it contains water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You know?
definitely. And I've also seen them eat leaves, like maple leaves that are brown. I've had them sitting in that blind. I've seen deer come in, walk past the corn, like the feeder, walk past it, and just start eating maple leaves off the ground. You're like, what the hell?
The reason they do that is because when maple leaves are getting ready to drop, it pushes all of its sugar into its leaves, and then it drops its leaves.
It's like a
and
sweet-
so it's a really sweet leaf, and it's actually deer. That's another secondary food source.
Maple leaves.
Yep.
Huh, no shit.
Yeah, because they actually push. I think they push their sugars
Because
into
there's
the
a
leaf.
big giant maple leaf, and it always drops every year, and those deer are in there all the time. And
Because the sugar maples around here. That's what they're actually called. So
that makes sense. There's a big maple, like literally, it's
probably what
huge.
it
It's
is.
like an old growth maple too. It's huge. It's giant.
So are you killing one buck a year pretty much? For the most part.
no, like are you mature buck or just buck?
We'll go with mature.
So mature buck, if I could kill one every other year, I was really doing something. Like it's every 2 to 3 years typically.
Right.
When I was into my prime, like we'll see what I can do this year. I don't know. It's a tall ask. It's so hard to kill one. I mean, it is so hard.
Yeah, I mean, especially on public, because every year it seems like public just gets more and more popular, dude. It just gets hunted harder and harder. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
just the nature of it.
I tell people this. It's a lonely game being a big buck hunter. Like if you're a trophy big buck hunter, like truly going after, like it's great if you have a primo property. Like that's rare to get one.
Right.
And then you just set it up and you can shoot one every year. Like once you get it set, like they know how you can do it. But to just go out and like I've never shot two mature bucks on the same property.
right, okay.
I've seen them, but I've never had an opportunity to kill two big bucks on the same property ever. Because I don't hold the properties long enough usually.
Right.
So do you think like year after year there'll be a mature buck better in a certain or like a particular bed?
No, I've seen properties absolutely void of bucks almost all year from year to year.
Huh.
Like,
I mean, my property right now is a perfect example. They don't live there. Like, they 100% don't live there. They're only there because they're just coming to eat.
I had a
they
farm
live
that
with
had, like-
neighbors. I know that.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like you have to set yourself up to kill them when they come to eat.
yeah.
Yep.
And it's timing. Like, so say October 15th, I get on camera the buck cruising through the section of woods every year. I'm going to be there October 15th.
Yeah.
And then I don't see anything till January. Then I'll just leave the farm alone until January. Like you can't hunt what's not there.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
if there's
they
no
don't
big bucks
exist.
in the area, I kind of like one's going to show up, one's going to go through, but
Right.
I'm not willing to waste my whole season waiting for that one to show up.
No.
I'll go find another one.
What I like to do is not run cell cameras, but SD cameras, and put them in an area and let it. I'll take a 32 gig card, lithium batteries. And I'll put the timing like 15 seconds delay, and so it's got some time. So if you're getting false triggers, it doesn't take a bunch. I'll leave that sit for a whole year, and I'll just watch it. And there's usually a period in there of a couple days where it seems like it's dead, like void of all deer, and then 3 days in November you'll have mature bucks back-to-back days. And that I feel like I'll write those dates down and say, okay, maybe I need to go back the following year and sit there on those 3 days, pick one of those days and just sit there all day and just wait. Because do you think history repeats itself like that?
Sometimes. But those dates are pretty universal all over the county.
It's always like the 14th of November. It's always a hot day.
October 15th
Mid-November
has always
better than
been a
early?
great day.
I think I don't know. This is just what I think.
Halloween-ish, like
Yeah, that's one I like.
Good
think
day.
Different areas, different areas have different periods where they're hot. I know, up north, Fair Hill, it always gets hot like that first week in November. It seems like Halloween to like the 5th or 6th of November is really good.
Yeah, and I have my best luck like the second week of November around here
Yeah.
for most of my stuff.
Yeah.
But the place I got, the private I had, it was really hot for the Halloween on that first week.
Yeah.
So this year I'm going to be there that Halloween week, and then I will go to public the second week of November.
Right.
Because I got spots that I know produce every year on that second week.
And that's when you killed your buck last year, right?
Yeah.
That October muzzleloader is always a good time.
Dude,
it's always a good time
that's
too.
when
I'm not a fan of it because I'm not a muzzleloader hunter.
Right.
Because
I'm just saying,
it's
like
such
that-
a primo time frame. Yeah.
Right. That for whatever reason that weekend seems to always be like when they get on their feet and start moving.
I've noticed before that early muzzleloader,
at 18, 19, 20th range.
there's like always a 2-day or like even sometimes a 1 day. There's like a flurry every year of like the 12th to like the 14th of October where there's always mature bucks on their feet in daylight. And it's a real short window.
Yeah.
And it happens real quick. Like Thomas shot that big one at his uncle's, like the 14th or something. And I've always gotten pictures of mature deer in daylight, like on the 13th, the 14th of October, which is just those 2 days. And then like nothing until Halloween-ish.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's like maybe they start scent checking does to try to like they want to be first, trying to find that first hot doe.
Second week of October is one of my favorite times of year because it's kind of like a shift. They're out searching for their territories.
Okay, maybe that's what it is.
I mean, nothing I'm saying is definite, but it's from what I observed over the years. Like it seems like they're kind of stretching their legs a little bit. They're breaking up from their groups, but some of them are hanging together still. It's kind of a weird time for them because they're getting aggressive, but they don't want to fight each other.
Right? Yeah. That's
I mean, I got a video on my phone. It's like perfect example of that. It's like second week of October, and they're all in the field, bucks and does. The little bucks are fighting each other, and the big ones
sitting back.
They were like, they were sitting, they were watching. They weren't aggressive, but they were also nudging those does a little bit. You know, not really like running them, but just kind of go up to them, nudge them a little bit, push them. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, I think you're right. Like, I think they're just in that weird transition of like trying to break up out of those bachelor groups, and
they're almost like expanding into their fall ranges a little bit.
Yeah. When I'm trying to look for a buck and he's completely disappeared and I don't see him all summer, typically, if that's the case, that second week of October 15th-ish is when they usually pop back in, because that means they're summering like 10 miles away. Yeah. Somewhere where I'm nowhere near them, and then all of a sudden he comes back to his home range again.
So that's what happened with that buck Thomas had killed. That buck, never seen it, never. I mean, he's hunted that property.
Has been on that property before.
Yeah, 100%.
And he knew it, but he was coming back because now he's like, I'm a big dog now. I want to come back and take my ladies.
He showed up that morning. Lance got a picture of him on a cell cam on a mock scrape. He showed up, went to the mock scrape. That's how they knew he was there. They had a couple other cameras placed around the property. They got pictures of him. The cameras were like one in the middle, one at the south end, one at the north end, one at the. But anyway, he walked in and literally was in there all day just walking around in that area. They got pictures on every camera. And he was just in that area. He came in at like 6 in the morning and just stayed in there. Was on his feet like 9 in the morning, noon, 2 o'clock. They got pictures of him. Yeah. Thomas calls him. He's like, should I go in there and hunt him? I'm like, yeah. I mean, he's in there right now. Like, go in there and hunt him. He went in there and hunted him and shot him at 4:30. Yep. So, like, he went in there, and it's only like a 6-acre block of woods. And he was just walking around that whole area all day on his feet in the daylight, just walking around.
There's something in there he wanted.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely...
And they don't bait or anything. So, I don't know if he was in there looking for does or what he was doing.
He was. Yeah. They definitely, like you said, like, they've been in there before, looking for does. They know where they live. And they also know where there's food, because I've seen deer that don't live on the property all of a sudden show up for a week stretch in January because they're, eating corn or eating crop or whatever, It's right place at the right time, I guess.
I feel like that's a lot of.
I mean, like we had a giant 10-point show up, like second to last week of January on corn, and he showed up 3 days in a row at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right at our stand, and I just like every day I kept telling myself, all right, if he shows up again tomorrow, I'll go in the next day and hunt him. Okay, and then he showed up like 2 days in a row. I was like, all right, if he comes here tomorrow, I'll definitely go in there and hunt him. He showed up that third day. I'm like, all right, I'm going. Never showed up. Never showed up. He was just in there, he's in there for those 3 days, just passing through or whatever.
He may have been so close, like he might have been watching that pile, like because a doe could still be in heat in January, and he might have been just sitting there waiting for a doe to come out.
Yeah, that's true.
When he did, he took her off.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
Or when you came in, he may have spot you 200 yards away because there's no leaves on the trees.
Right.
Like it's so hard to say, but it's tough.
What's your favorite time of the year to hunt?
September,
early season,
or September, or the first 2 weeks of October.
Most patternable, is that why? Because it's just bed to food. Yeah, bedding pattern to food.
There's no very limited disturbance from hunters. Yeah, deer are more consistent, and there's the rut is very chaotic. And it's fun because it's chaotic. Right, but I'm not using any tactics when I'm hunting a rut. I'm sitting in a pinch point funnel between bedding and food, and that's it. Like,
that's what I've tried to explain to people too. Is like for people that, and no, you're shaded anybody, but people just don't know, and they're always like, yeah, I mean, the rut's the best time to hunt. And I'm like, well, it's fun to watch.
It's fun to hunt.
It's just all luck though. Right place at the right time. Whereas like you're saying, like September, October, like it's easier to be like, okay, I know he's coming out of this trail to this field every day at 5 o'clock.
And they give you about a week. Like typically they'll bed in that spot for a week. Like there's no saying I'm gonna wait till the weekend or next week when it's cooler. Right. Like, if he's there and it's 100 degrees out, you be there when it's 100 degrees out. Right. Like there's no reason to wait for anything in life. Like you're deer hunting, he's there, you hunt him.
Right.
Like, you just go in, just deal with it. Like, you're on sweat, who cares?
Yeah.
It'll all go away when you have your buck.
Right.
Strike while the iron is hot.
Yeah.
I embrace the heat, embrace it, and
Sometimes, brace us up. Sometimes. Yeah, I mean, it's all good stuff. I don't know. You guys got anything else you want to throw in there? Anything else you want to talk about?
Not really.
I mean,
Has anybody found anything big yet that they are interested in?
I mean, we're watching 2 nice ones on my farm.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, coming out of the swamp.
Really?
Yeah, they come like
wait that week till before the season and set it.
Yeah.
For real. I mean, and then in the meantime, practice a couple climbs in your yard, like just to get used to climbing and hunting that same day.
That's the one thing I wanted to bring up. Are you a saddle? You're a saddle guy, right?
Kind of. So I do
Hybrid.
what they call a hybrid. I use a very small lock-on with climbing sticks. So I use 3 sticks, a small lock-on, and I use the saddle as like my safety harness, and I will shoot out of the saddle if, like, say the deer's on the back of the tree.
They turn around.
Right. Okay.
So-
So you're using it so that you can get on that backside of that tree.
Yeah, I'm not so. And then to break up time, I'll sit in the saddle for a couple hours, and then I'll sit on the seat for a couple hours if it's slow.
Dude, I got a buddy, one of the guys we hunt with, and he will literally just stand for the entire hunt.
On a hang-on?
No, like on a hang-on or on a ladder stand or whatever. Like, I'm like a sit-down kind of guy till I know it's about to get right. You know, he stands the whole time. So like, I don't know how you do that, dude.
Dedication.
A couple years ago, I took the seat off my stand to try to save weight, and I'm saving a pound. But for like a month, I stood every hunt.
That's tough, dude.
You get used to it. Like, you kind of just get in that rhythm, and you lean against the tree, kind of like you're leaning against a wall.
Right.
And then you just, it gets comfortable, but the saddle helps, and having that seat there just to take the pressure off the legs is awesome. So it's worth the extra pound of weight.
Right. I feel like when I'm standing, because I'm up standing, I feel like I move a lot more because I'm constantly just like looking. Whereas if I'm sitting, kind of just like, just looking around.
Yeah,
real
I can
easy,
get more comfortable sitting.
When I'm standing, I'm like, what's going on?
That's a big downfall. You start swinging around in your saddle. Like, you don't realize you're doing it, but you start rocking. You're swaying.
Right.
And I've been picked off a lot more in my saddle than anything.
Really?
You just got to be conscious of what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I did the saddle thing for just a couple times, but when I was hunting public, I was using a climber, and I mean, climbers are light, but I mean, saddle definitely seems like the way to go if you're doing it all the time. But
First time hunting out of a saddle is when I shot that big one.
That was your first sit?
First set, and Holt, I bought that saddle from Holt, and
The weekend before.
Yeah.
Or a couple days before.
I had hunted out of it, I think, a couple times, but like the first encounter with a deer, like that I was going to shoot was.
shooting one out of a saddle is.
I was like, "You got to be
different
kidding me!"
thing.
Like, he walked out, I was like, "Great!" I mean, that's like, I remember thinking that, like, "Great, this is the first deer that I'm drawing on from a saddle, and it's this freaking deer, of course." So this would happen to me, but it worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you just gotta practice. Like, I
And
mean,
I try to
have you shot out of
always-
yours yet?
I haven't yet.
Yeah. Do you have a tree you can just like one stick up just to get off the ground and try to shoot?
That's what I'll do in the
that's what I'll
backyard.
do.
I'll get up
Go
like
get
one
a
stick,
dance.
put the platform up like one stick high, and just get used to shooting.
So, like, practice is everything, and do repetitive. Like, do the exact same way you climb every time.
Yep.
And when you break down and pack up, do the exact same thing every time, and it gets so
Become efficient.
You get so efficient at it and used to it that you can do it in the dark. You're not
Not making a bunch of noise.
death grabbing a tree. It fatigues you so bad when you're like almost scared, like holding on too tight. Like, you start squeezing real hard. That's when all the blood, like, you're losing like your strength, and you get fatigued and start sweating.
Yeah.
It has to become second nature. Like, you're just enjoying it. Like, you get up there like you're doing it every day. Like,
Yeah.
It's just one of those things too with the saddle. Like, it takes a couple times to have faith in that thing. Like,
when
you're
you
not-
lean back in it.
Yeah, like, you're not going to go anywhere.
It's like
you're
doing a
wrapped
trust
around
fall.
the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to have trust in it. Like,
It's
it
like a
feels
trust
weird
fall. Yeah.
this first couple times to lean back against it.
I sent him a link to the tether I use. It's 5mm. I mean,
I think it's the same one.
it's
the same
thinner than
one.
this. And that's what I had.
Yeah, no, that's not the same one. Yeah, I'm a big boy. I'm not using
I'd
this.
accidentally nick it on the way.
Brought it.
It's 3,000. It's 3 or 4,000 pound
Tensile
strengthening on it.
strength,
So,
yeah.
and it's a climbing. It's actually a climbing rope. So
Right.
The first couple times I saddle hunted, I kept my lineman's belt around the tree.
Yeah.
Until I just got comfortable, like leaning back, and I was like, whoa, this kind of feels weird. And then I was like,
absolutely would do that. Whatever it takes to make you feel comfortable.
I sat there with my. Sometimes if I'm like high and kind of like sketched out, I'll just leave my lineman's belt around the tree, just because it's like a secondary, like it's like a fail safe. Like if my tether fails or something, God forbid.
You can do 2 tethers also. Like do
really?
one up high and do one down
I never
low.
even thought about that.
Do
Clip.
one low and then clip them both in. So what I do, like when I do a tether, I actually loosen it when a deer comes, so I have more more movement.
Yeah.
And it's a little more dangerous because you can fall back farther. But I get that if you have a second one on, it's a secondary.
I never even thought about that.
You can lean back in that low tether. It makes you can shoot your bow easier.
That's kind of like when I set my saddle. Sometimes when I leave my lineman's belt on, I'll keep my lineman's belt real low. I'll keep it low, almost like
you lose your hip mobility that way. So if you do the low tether, the high tether, you don't lose any mobility. You just so what you do is when a deer comes, loosen your top tether and just sit on your lower one, and you got way more movement that way.
Right.
It's not as comfortable because it pinches the hips more, but you're just shooting a deer, so you don't need you need that hip pinch.
Yeah, you just have to get comfortable. Like
you got to trust it
because you're leaning
It is
when
weird
you
at
shoot,
first.
so you're kind of like leaning into it. You know, you have to get used to that. You know, it's not like you're standing stationary.
That's why I hybrid hunt, because my form absolutely horrible shooting from a saddle. I can nail the target in the yard, but when a deer's walking around, I lose my form completely and I start wounding a lot of deer.
Okay.
And I realize I have to have my feet under me.
Okay.
Like, so I can, your feet are kind of under you when you're in your saddle, you kick down at an angle, but I need them under my shoulders. So when a deer comes in and I'm in my saddle, I typically will stand up on the platform and shoot from the platform, not leaning into the saddle.
Okay.
Rarely I'll swivel around the tree and just shoot out of the saddle. It does happen once in a while.
Yeah, that's like the one thing I like always struggled with when I would practice is like when you had to really swing around to shoot, you know, because I also shoot better with my feet under me.
Yes.
You know, but I only did the saddle thing a couple times and I never shot one. I had a chance to shoot does, but never.
I think
a
that.
buck.
I mean, saddles are comfortable, but I think that a tree stand's definitely like if you want comfort, that's the way to go. But like, the thing that kills me is walking in with a stand. That just like it.
Well, your level.
Well, yeah, your level's pretty light.
It's about 5 pounds. The whole stand is 5 pounds. So
Have you seen the new one they just dropped? The new Lone Wolf? It's
the hybrid.
Yeah, the hybrid one.
Yeah.
I don't
think it has a seat.
Well, their hybrid one has a seat, but the seat's almost as big as the platform, so it would almost push you off if you sat down.
Right, yeah. It looks like it's crazy light.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love I can fit everything onto or in a backpack. And I love, I just need something like streamlined that stays like inside my body. And then you just go in. I actually got suspenders this year for my saddle because I was having.
I told you what to do. You throw your
your lineman's
belt over your shoulders.
Yeah, I didn't
it's
think
a
about
free
that.
set.
Like you clip into your take your lineman's belt and clip into both sides of your hips
and flip it over your neck, tighten it, and it becomes suspenders.
Yeah,
because like when you're walking in with that thing on you,
it's like
it's heavy on your hips.
And it falls
feels like it's gonna fall down.
It does. It does fall down.
It feels like a diaper.
It feels like a diaper.
People call it a diaper.
Yeah. It feels like you're like waddling. I'll be like waddling in the woods, like trying to pull this diaper. It feels like a diaper, like a shitty diaper. But
I mean, I had a buddy that would pack it all the way in, and then when he got to the base of stand, then he would put it on.
I did that a couple times this year with bibs on.
Seems like a lot more movement.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's I mean, if you can have it on already, that's the way to go. But
some spots where I was going like a mile and a half, like at Fair Hill. Like some of the spots that I'd like to go to are pretty far from the lot. I mean, you don't always have to be that far, but I would walk that far with my bibs on and like wearing the saddle with the bibs. Like, Holt never does that. He's always, I'd walk that far with my bibs on if it was really cold. But I figured, like, walking in with the saddle, it would always be falling down. It was just a pain. So I did try, like, putting in my backpack and then just putting it on when I got to the base of the tree. But then I got to the tree and I didn't like all the movement I was making and the noise trying to jump into this saddle to climb up the tree as well.
I was there the night he shot his buck. I came out to the parking lot and met him at the parking lot to see the deer. And he smelled like a buffalo.
Yeah.
So sweaty.
Dude, I thought I was going to die. Lance was dragging
the ruddy buck that he just shot smelled better than
dude, I was wearing those first light pants. like the thin merino pants.
yeah,
Dude, I had completely blown them out. Like my ass, I looked like I was wearing like assless chaps. They was just ripped because like in the process of like dragging the deer, I just ripped my pants.
It's all.
I mean,
Yeah, it was. I got back, I was covered in like blood.
you got to drag that deer far too from
Dude.
where you park. That's that's the one crappy thing about.
Yeah, the guy.
Fairhill
has to be insane to shoot a doe.
A guy. Me and Lance are dragging this thing out, and this guy in the an e-bike pulls up next to us. He was like, "You want me to go back to my truck and grab my wagon? I have a hitch that I can hook up to my e-bike. You want me to just grab it and pull it?" We're like, "Nah, dude, it's all right." But hey, he's like, "I can hook up a wagon to my deer cart to my e-bike with a hitch." And I'm like, "What the hell?" Like,
My buddy Alex took
no,
like
I
an
don't
old,
think so either.
like an old wagon, like a kid wagon, and put like beefed up off-road tires on it, and that's what he just drag. He holds it back behind him as he's going in, and then he just leaves it
That's
like on
part
the edge
of
of
the
the
fun,
field
though,
and
is
goes
the
in.
sucky drag.
Yeah.
So I thought it was superstitious. I would bring my deer cart and leave it in my truck.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
I would never shoot a deer. And the second I take that cart out, I'd shoot a deer.
Yeah.
So I kind of got superstitious about it, but then I give that up. But most of the time when I shoot a deer, I don't want to go back to the truck and get it because it's like a mile plus walk. So I'm like, by the time I drag this deer or carry it on my back
I
to
could
the
just be
truck,
done.
I'll be done. And I don't have to make 2 trips. So
That
I
sucks,
don't know.
man.
So I get myself in shape. I actually work out like crazy all summer to get
Right.
myself in shape just to drag deer off public land. Like
Yeah, that's what you told me
I
this
don't-
That's
year.
kind of what you have to do. It's a good thing you just got back in the gym, bro.
I know. You need it in.
and water.
I'll probably have a heart attack if I
Bring
shoot a
double the
deer.
water with you
Right.
in the summer. Because
Yeah.
I've drinking a gallon of water on a deer drag and it still felt dehydrated.
I remember one time we went and hunted a piece
Especially
of
when you're
public
by
together.
yourself, man.
Yeah.
Like
And
towards the
it's-
end of that drag when you're only getting it like 10 feet at a
Yeah.
time. Like, oh god.
I think this guy owes me a drag or something.
Yeah, I think so.
I'll tell you, one of the guys we hunt with, man, for like there was like a 6-year period where I shot a deer, like I shot a buck every year, and he always seemed to be the one hunting with us when I would shoot. So he was always the one helping me drag. And for like the last 4 years, it's been him shooting them, and I've been there. So I was like, he's like, you owe me, bro. We're dragging. We're dragging.
So I love the drag. Like I like when
Oh,
buddies
yeah, me
call
too,
me up.
man.
Like
Yeah, me too.
even if we haven't been hunting together all year, I love when they call me and say, "Hey, I shot a buck." I'm like, "Oh, I'm on my way."
Yeah, I like that. They're like the recovery.
And,
yeah, to like be there together and like recover the deer and like that's part of the fun.
Dude, that freak, when my buddy shot that big 8 down in Centerville, I mean, he shot it right at dark and called me and my dad, and that's an hour and a half drive, you know, and we're like, don't go in, like, we're coming. Yeah,
and drop everything you're doing.
I was like eating dinner, I'm like, call my dad, I'm like, come over, we'll get in my truck and we'll go.
Yeah.
And we got, like, I'm like, wait for us to go in there, and, you know, just because we had a lot of history of that deer, and it's fun to be a part of that, you know, like.
Yeah, it's like when Thomas shot that one this year. I was sitting in the ground blind and I was down with my brothers and he called me, dude. He was like, it sounded like he was about to cry.
I told you to stay.
Yeah. I was like, what should I do? And I ran. I was so excited for him. I just was like, screw it. I can burn him. I just ran out and drove all the way back up to like Fairhill, Elkton, and wanted to be there with him when he recovered it. And I was like, screw it. But I should have stayed.
You wouldn't have shot him anyway.
Yeah, no. Yep. Nope. That deer, that big tall one's dead.
Yeah.
That one, he's dead. I don't have anything going on down there.
Ears.
Yeah, but
That one I found the shed off of.
yeah, that was a rut. I passed him in the rut last year.
Yeah, he just came in during the rut, I think.
Yeah. But he's going to be a nice deer this year, and he's still alive. Hopefully. I mean,
is.
you found his shed
Yeah.
in March, right? You have the shed. Right?
February.
Do you have the shed here?
Out in the pile of.
Yeah. We have to find
this little one.
We'd have to go.
Yeah.
Started with the
He's
pile.
going to be a nice deer.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he'll be good.
He's got a good frame.
Glad I passed him last year. After
Especially
I think you
that
showed him
broken
to
brow.
me.
I'm going after that 8-pointer you found. The shit off.
Oh yeah.
Don't worry
We
about
know.
that.
We'll talk about that when we're all fair.
Yeah.
Are you on Facebook?
No. I don't do any social media. Like, I'm pretty private about stuff. So.
Right. And I
Like,
get
this
that.
is the most I'll do. So.
Yeah, so there's a guy, and you know, the East Coast Bucks guy.
Yeah.
Dude,
East Coast
he's a
Bucks.
public land guy, and he has shot some just insane deer. Like, I don't know how he's finding these deer, and people don't know about them. He posted one today. It was an 8-point, and it was the biggest 8-point I've ever seen.
It's pretty insane.
It is, right?
I want to.
I don't know how
Can I
he's
see a
doing
picture
it.
of it after we get off this?
Yeah, I'll show you
his page.
Like, and he's posted pictures of.
Is he a Maryland guy?
He's Maryland and Virginia.
Maryland, and Virginia. So yeah, a lot of those.
Eastern Shore.
Yeah, he's just an Eastern Shore guy.
freaks.
He's
A
coming
lot of those-
He's
Kill 200.
He told me.
Really?
He'd come on.
A lot of those guys too. They hunt that lower western shore too.
There's a lot of big public
And
land
like
down there.
Prince
Like,
George's, PG County,
Mary,
St. Mary's.
St. Mary's is, there's
Yeah.
some big ones come out there every
That's
year.
where that
Right.
one, and it's all swamp. It's all frag
Yeah.
marsh, and that's where they're at.
Sorry. Do you by chance know Rob Fryer? No. Okay. I was just curious.
Is that the guy?
No, but he's
I
another
know
big
what
buck
you're
killer. Yeah, he's.
It's all just giant marshes, and
I know a couple guys, but I'm not going to say their names, but
Right.
they're really private.
right.
And
Do you have to be when you're
yeah,
shooting big deer?
I feel like it's the only way to be consistently a killer is to. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It all
And like once
depends.
people like we don't have a big following, so don't worry. I don't know how many people are gonna listen to this, but like once people figure out like
well, I'll push
like-
it out there. Like, so I do a hunting forum. Like, that's most social media I do.
You're on the
Gotcha.
Bill Hunter,
Yeah.
Bill Hunter forum.
Billhunting.com.
But yeah.
Okay.
wow, that's still going.
Yeah.
Or yeah, that one is. Sorry, I was thinking of
So I've been on
Maryland
there
Whitetail.
for, it's still
Yeah.
going too, but I'm on there, but I don't post anything ever. I just go in there to look at local bucks.
Right.
But the bowhunting.com one, I'm on there almost every day, and I share a lot of stuff with them.
Right.
And I've made a lot of friends all over the country on there. So
It just sucks because like once people figure out like that how consistent you are and like what you've killed and stuff, like then people start following. You
Yeah.
know, like and you really have to like try to combat that.
there's
somehow.
a lot of paranoia because when I was chasing that big one,
Right.
the 200, I actually got it conceived in my brain that people were following me down the road. I swear.
I bet, man. I bet.
And I told no one. There was
crazy.
probably like
Yeah, I bet.
there's probably like 5 people in the world that knew about that deer.
Right.
6 maybe. Like, it was almost. I told a couple close friends, and then I was using them for strategies.
Yeah.
And then there was 2 neighbors, one on each side of the property, that knew about the deer that I didn't know they knew until after I shot it.
Right. I mean, that one Carl shot, he was the same way. Like, it literally showed itself all summer long, 50 yards off the road. And
No
he
wonder that deer didn't get poached.
That's what
And
he
then
was
the
like, definitely
shed
afraid
rate.
that it was going to get poached, you know.
Yeah.
And it's once summer ended, it disappeared into the woods. You know, nobody saw it. But then when it shed, that guy picked up the shed off of Carl's property from he saw it from the road and knew the deer because of that, or because he saw it all summer and stuff. And when Carl shot it, the guy made him pay for the shed, and he
Really?
took it off of Carl's property.
That's
it's
crazy.
like that. So I get it. Like if I knew that there was a big one,
Cutthroat.
constantly in my
That's
head, I would just be
crazy.
thinking that somebody saw it from the
I picked
road.
the shed up too.
So
Yeah.
what
Yeah, it was
clued me
huge.
in on that big one was the year prior. I knew the area and there was public nearby. I heard a story of a guy hunting on the public during the muzzleloader season, during the doe season. So it was no bucks allowed. And he said he saw the biggest buck he's ever seen of his life walk by, and he couldn't shoot it because it was doe season. He had his muzzleloader,
Didn't have a bow with them.
which I find unbelievable because I think most people would probably shoot it and find a way to get it out. It was bow season.
Right.
And so when that happened, I knew the creek bottom he was hunting. I didn't know the guy.
Was this on public land?
Yeah,
It was on public.
on public. So I knew the guy. I didn't know the guy hunting. I knew his friend, and his friend told me the story.
Gotcha.
And I just put the dots together.
Right.
So I was like, well, my buddy has a lease down there. He keeps inviting me on every year that I can get in on. Maybe there's a chance he's over there. I got in on that, and sure enough, he was over there.
Wow.
And that's how I found him. Just
That's awesome.
listening, like,
Oh, the guy was
Not-
on public land.
yeah. But that deer would travel to public land.
Really?
Yeah.
That's insane,
Wow.
dude. It's just so crazy how sneaky they are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
they are.
how,
Really?
how
That's
well they
wild.
can freaking hide in plain daylight.
I keep hearing this story, it was probably 10 plus years ago, of a 200-inch buck shot on public land. I'm not going to name this place, but
Right.
Fun.
I cannot back the story up. I've been searching, looking, trying to talk to people, hearing about it. I just keep hearing about the story once in a while, and I still haven't seen a picture of the deer or anything of it. And whatever, if it did happen, it just disappeared.
Right.
But so
like
it can happen. It can happen.
Yeah,
anywhere.
I mean, and I feel like that's what happens to a lot of those 200-inch deer. Is they kind of just they're just like they just turn into rumors
Yep.
because people hide them so well, you know.
Yeah.
Especially like 10 years ago and before you know,
Before social media and
before
trail
social media.
cameras.
Now the internet's a thing, and you know. I don't think you get away with anything really, unless you just don't have any.
Yeah.
Which is probably the best thing to do.
Yeah, I don't have any not because of hunting. It's just because I don't deal with all the
I get it.
the bad stuff with it.
Right.
But like, here's another story. I was hunting this property where I shot my first mature buck, and the next year I saw a buck that was looking like about 180 inches, and he was about 12 inches wide, spread, but he was stuck up off his head about over 24 inches tall.
Holy crap!
And I call him kind of the flame. Like, he looked like a fire coming off the top of his head. That same year, across Elk River, in Chesapeake City, a buck that looked identical to him during the rut got hit on 213. The guy picked it up off the road and got it mounted, and I'm almost guaranteed it was the same buck. That deer swam the Elk River.
That's crazy.
I wouldn't put past him, man.
I have a story like that from Bell. I'm not going to name locations. Well,
he talked about it
Oh yeah,
on the podcast.
yeah. So Bo, he used to hunt a property on the sassafras, and anyway, this buck had been living on the property that he hunted on the sass, and it had like a Nike swoosh or something.
Yeah, that's what he called it.
On his like one, he had like a brow tine that came out like off of his base, and like was like it looked like a Nike swoosh. Yeah, it was really
like
unique,
very identifiable.
And he was living on the Sass, this little island, and he was going across. I guess his cousin or something.
Yeah,
hunted in Earlville across the river, and it was probably 5 miles away.
Right.
Killed it in January, like 5 miles away. And the only way to get there would be to go way out, like back to 213, go all the way around, all the way back through Cecilton, and like get back down Grove. But so he had to swim across the river.
Yeah.
He had to have gone right across the river. He probably jumped up on like Mount Harmon and then just went across the fields.
Yeah, I mean, they swim the Great Lakes all the time, dude. It's like,
I mean, I've seen pictures. Yeah. I've never seen it personally.
They'll do what they got to do.
But I've seen pictures of deer like in front of the VA, like swimming across the flats, like big bucks swimming across
the flats.
Across the flats.
Zach Persley had a video for a while.
Yeah.
So
swimming in furnace.
the only thing that I saw when I was a young, I did duck hunt when I was a kid. I was duck hunting, and I saw what looked like a duck swimming across the river and coming right at me. I'm sitting there watching, like there's a duck coming right into the decoy. He's like swimming to us, not flying.
You're ready, boys. Water spot this.
I'm watching, and then it comes up out of the water. It was a doe, and just her head was sticking out of the water.
Wow.
And it looked like a duck swimming across the river. And she came and walked right up on the beach right beside us, and walked right beside the blind, went up in the woods.
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's insane.
I mean, I can picture them like swimming across like small, like bodies of water, like a creek or something, but I would think for them to have to swim across like a river, for them to want to do that, they had to have been pushed.
My buddy's dad tried to drown a buck one time when they were duck hunting. He was swimming through the decoys, and
that's probably not a good story.
I mean, this was back in like the 80s. He's dead now.
The last month.
He's dead now. So
we were kids duck hunting
again. He saw this big buck and he grabbed it by the antlers and tried to drown it. They got away from him.
Jesus.
Another duck hunting story as kids. We were sitting in reeds hunting ducks in a marsh, and we heard beagles howling on the other side. And all of a sudden, a buck came busting out through the reeds, and the beagles were chasing it. It jumped into the marsh. No, they're just dogs were just running.
Right.
This is 30 years ago.
Right.
The buck jumped out in the waters. The marsh was low, so it's like kind of jumped across it, and then almost ran right through the middle of our blind. All of us in the blind picked our guns up and pointed at the buck because we thought we were going to get run over.
Like you were going to have to shoot it in self-defense.
And it was like a 120-inch 10-pointer. Like, it was a decent wide-racked buck. Like, it looked like it was going to just blow right through us. Wow. But it veered right. Like, we all yelled, kind of jumped. Yeah, whoa! And it jumped and went right beside us and went back in the marsh.
Huh. Crazy. Well, I guess we'll end it on that one. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was a fun conversation. You're a super knowledgeable guy, and I think maybe in another month or so we'll get you back on to talk.
Yeah,
right before the season. We'll talk about that. We'll do a good story.
I have probably 2 or 3 really, really wild just deer hunting stories. Some of them aren't great, but like endings. But I can always tell the story.
Yeah.
That's 200-inch buck.
Were you
too.
mobile hunting him? Were you like bouncing around, or were you kind of like bouncing around in the same like general area?
Yeah, I was moving. I was doing lock-ons at that time,
Yeah.
but I was moving them when I needed to.
Okay.
I had 2 that I kept cycling through.
So you were leaving them in the woods.
I
and
would
then
leave them that
moving.
night when I get down, and I
Okay.
would come back whenever I came back to hunt. If I needed to move
And
it,
shift
I would
a
take
little.
it down and move it. And,
Okay.
But the stand I shot him out of, I was about 12 feet off the ground,
Yeah, that's about where I like to hunt. I don't like heights.
and I put the stand up a week before I shot him.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah, so he didn't.
So
Probably never even know it was there.
it was a little bit farther in, closer to the creek than I wanted to be.
Right.
But I saved it for that last ditch effort.
Right.
And I put it there, left it, and then that week I hunted almost every day out of that same stand. Straight, because I knew at some point he was going to come by there.
Right. Right.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Cool. Well, yeah, man, we'll get you back on. Yeah, appreciate it. And you boys got anything else to add?
Nope, just counting down the days.
Yes, sir. It's
Counting
coming.
down the days. About a month. It's September 6th this year. Maybe catch one in velvet. Probably not.
Nice.
Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, neither.
Every year you go to the butcher shop though in September, like there's always a velvet
Yeah.
buck.
It happens.
I almost shot mine in velvet, the 200.
Yeah, the video.
Damn, that would have been sweet.
I didn't want to though.
I got like
I wanted 'em
110
hardwood.
inch in velvet.
Really?
Whatever.
I would every day of the week rather have them.
I was looking at that one earlier.
What?
I said, I got one in velvet, about 110 inches, and he pointed at that little tiny rack in the case over there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're going down. Is that velvet? Yeah, it's in velvet. Yeah. Yep, that's him.
But well, cool. Thanks again,
All
Holt.
right.
I really appreciate
Thank
it, buddy.
you. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, again, it's the Upper Bay Podcast. You can find us on Spotify and YouTube. Later.